Good evening. Welcome to June 4th, 2024 special City Council meeting. Start with prayer. Dear God, today as the session opens, we pray that your presence will be before us and everyone who serves in the decision-making process of our city. We pray for direction which will lead our city to be strong and unified. May we continue the legacy of our founders. May we be granted this day the wisdom to make decisions which will be for the good of our city. We also pray for your special blessing on all those who are working to transform our city and make it a better place to live and work. Amen. Join me in saluting the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Mr. Clerk, roll call.
Council Dakota.
Here.
Council Gitchia.
Here.
Council Janess.
Here.
Council Leahy.
Here.
Council Mercier.
Here.
Council Noon.
Here.
Council Robinson.
Here.
Mayor Rourke.
Here.
Council Scott.
Here.
Council Yem.
Here.
Council Chow.
Here.
11 present.
Council Mercier.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to offer a moment of silence in Docking Chamber for Beverly Whalen Coughlin. Beverly attended the Immaculate Conception School and graduated with the class of 1943. She attended Notre Dame Academy in Tingsboro. Beverly graduated from Trinity College in Washington, D.C., where she earned an honors degree as a chemistry major. Beverly received her master's degree in counseling from Fitchburg State College. After graduating from Trinity in 1951, Beverly began her career with the Department of Agriculture in Maryland, where she worked briefly. Desiring to return home, she obtained a position with the Massachusetts State Police Crime Laboratory, where she served as one of the first female chemists to work in that position. Beverly loved working for the state police and found herself in the middle of many high-profile police cases. In 1957, after marrying Daniel Coughlin, she resigned from the state police to become a mother. She would eventually have 7 children. In the early 1970s, she began a second career as an educator at Lowell High School in crisis intervention and proceeded to help many students navigate difficult life situations. She also contributed to the Lowell community, serving on the board of directors of the Lowell Day Nursery School for 35 years. Additionally, Beverly volunteered with Catholic Charities and served as a lector for the Immaculate Conception Parish for many years. She was the devoted mother of Catherine, Bridget, Daniel, Joseph, Patrick, Christopher, and Timothy Coughlin, a City of Lowell employee in the city clerk's office and now in the election office. Loving grandmother of Katie, Mara, Patrick, and Kate Abigail, we offer our condolences to her family, relatives, and many friends. We also offer a moment of silence in Docking Chamber to all those who passed away since our last City Council meeting. May they all rest in peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Any others? Mr. Clerk, please talk to the chamber. Sean. You rest in peace. Section 2, Mayor's Business 2.1, Communication, Remote Zoom Participation. A motion to accept and place on file by Councilor Chow, second by Councilor Dakota. All in favor say aye. Opposed, motion passes. Section 3, General Public Hearings. We have 12 on the agenda this evening. All the hearings must be given a second reading. Open the hearing, close the hearing, and then a motion to adopt with a roll call vote needed. First up is 3.1, a vote for the FY 2025 Appropriation Order. Mr. Manager, you want to speak first?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and councilors and residents of Lowell. I ask for a few moments of your time to present some of the major highlights and the challenges of the fiscal year 2025 budget. The total budget, including water, wastewater, and the parking enterprise fund, is $583,735,000. As the council is aware, many municipalities are faced with fiscal challenges, and the city of Lowell is no different. Lowell's tax levy in 2024 was $174 million. Our tax levy represents 31.9% of the total revenue of our budget. A 1% increase in taxes brings approximately $1.74 million. The proposal before you is a 2.5% tax increase, which brings approximately $4.35 million to the general fund. The estimated impact of this increase is $135.14 per year to a home at in and around $450,000. It is important to note that the City of Lowell still has an excess levy capacity, and that's in the range of about $13.1 million. This $13.1 million represents taxes that the city could charge, but simply we do not, making Lowell one of the best and most affordable options in the area. We are very lucky to have that type of money in our reserve. In a brief synopsis, I'd like to bring your attention to 4 areas. 1 being our financial challenges. 2, an amended proposal for trash and a strategy to close that revenue gap. 3, a renewed perspective on the opera proposal that's been presented. And 4, a vision for the fiscal year and beyond. Our financial challenges, as every household has experienced an increase in costs, so has the City of Lowell. From interest rates, wage adjustments, to purchasing goods and services. The city has experienced an increase in our payment to our debt service budget from $13.4 million to $17.5, which shows an increase of $4.1 million. This increase is directly due to the priorities that collectively we all support. Just to name some of the things: the Lowell Memorial Auditorium, the preservation of our roads, ADA ramps, sidewalks, school renovations, working with the MSBA Accelerator Repair Program. And just to bring this up, the Lowell High School is looking beautiful. And so far, we have borrowed $89 million out of the $129 million that we need. Another financial challenge that the city is facing is from PERAC, an increase from our pension assessment of $2.6 million. Charter schools, another assessment that has increased by $4.5 million. It was 42.3, and now we're looking at $46.8 million. Our health care increase is stabilizing, but it did increase by $1.14 million. In total, out of the big 4 accounts, the costs have increased approximately a little bit more than $12 million just in those 4 accounts. The examples cited above are only a portion of the financial challenges that we have had. But yet this City Council has shown a can-do attitude and has displayed great courage to continue to have difficult conversations on true costs. Moving my discussion towards trash, my intent in addressing the fee schedule was rooted in the glaring disparity between the cost of providing the service and the revenue generated from the existing fees. There will be some push and pull, as I like to call it, but we've always come together to find a resolution that is fair and something that is reasonable. I truly believe that user fees should be borne by the user and not others. The fact that it had not been raised since 2008 pushed me into that direction. However, I'm not afraid to admit when I've been too aggressive with an increase. And I'd like to thank Councilor Murcia, as well as all of the councilors, for bringing this up to me on the floor just a few weeks ago. That discussion and many discussions I've had with all of you have given us this opportunity to look at something new. The major takeaway from all of the councilors and even the residents was the increase definitely is warranted. We all understand we haven't had an increase since 2008, but as one councilor put it, it was too much, too soon. So once again, I want to say thank you to the councilors for the discussion and their direction. This revised proposal will only raise the trash fee from its current $125 to $225 per year. It also has $52 per year for seniors. Absentee landlords for properties of 4 units and under will pay what we consider the full rate of $425. I want to say that there are some experiences where there's a 5-unit where somebody lives there. That will be things that we'll be working through. As previously discussed on this floor, this is not where we're going to stop. We're also going to be pursuing other options. For instance, there's been a lot of discussion on this floor about contamination. Over the past 4 years, the contamination rate is approximately 24% per year. Currently, our team has dropped that down to 17%, and it's due to enforcement, education, and rejecting totes by the curb by drivers. Just today, driving through Centerville, looking at a few things, I had noticed what they were doing. They were spinning the green barrels and putting educational material on it. In the future, we are going to explore and hopefully fully implement what they're referring to as a third eye technology. This technology will validate service in real time and to capture the unforeseen contamination in those recycling totes. The goal is to drive contamination below the 10% acceptable threshold. This will eliminate all of our fines. There's another option, pay as you throw, which I know Councilor Scott's been talking about, and that's the Waste Zero initiative. Currently, we purchase overflow bags for citizens to use the excess trash. Our future could hold to offer a program to citizens to pay per bag. That's something that we're also going to look at. Currently, there's also no formal compost programs at any of our schools. Formal compost programs. Recycling is minimal and has been reduced. What does our future hold? In our future, we're looking to implement a compost program at the high school, at the STEM, at the Green Alley, just to name a few. We've been working with our consultant, Green School, who has done a walkthrough and is ready to report on a recommended action plan shortly. We also want to reintroduce single stream recycling at all the schools. Free totes and bins supplied by the Green School Initiative. We also want to work on getting liaisons at each school because we know these best practices will carry back home. Green schools will provide all electronic brochures in multiple languages. The philosophy, once again, bringing the best practices at school, and those children will bring them home. We're also working with a vendor right now where residents will be able to pay for a subscription of curbside composting weekly for a fee. They will receive compost back in return for their food scraps. We're looking at textiles. Currently, we have 12 drop-off bins right now, also a drop-off bin over at the DPW. But what our future holds for us, we're working with a vendor right now to implement a curbside textile pickup weekly, which would be free of charge for residents. Currently, we're working on this right now and hope to have it to you soon. The other piece, with working with twice a year in materials on Saturdays, we need to do better than that. Our recycling coordinator, we're trying to get our recycling coordinator certified to handle a drop-off facility for all goods, both hazmat, regular bulk, and white items. And we want to do this not only during regular business hours, but on the weekends, where people have that opportunity to be there. This may require a little bit more staffing, but that's something we'll set up in the future. However, what we do know is the Department of Environmental Protection offers grants into the tune of about $250,000 to help set these facilities up. And to get right back onto enforcement efforts and education, our full-time folks are out there in the field 5 days per week, auditing upwards of 400 to 500 residents per day. The enforcement coordinator canvasses the routes, and I just happened to run into it today. It's something to be seen. And the educational materials are left behind if people are doing the wrong thing, and minor infractions. However, if there are major infractions, they turn it around and tag it and fine it. An average of 85 citations have been issued weekly, with that fine incrementally climbing. But once again, we're not looking to fine people. What we're trying to do is to educate people. In regards to ARPA, there's been an issue. And I've received significant feedback on the use of funding for positions by all of the councilors. And I want to thank you for that. During our community outreach, there was even some public misunderstanding about jobs and the wage adjustment that we just finished, that all of the councilors here know how important that wage adjustment was. We did partially fund the wage adjustment with ARPA, but in the fiscal year 25 budget, which I'm proposing to you, that cost has now been absorbed. That cost has completely been absorbed in 2025. Moving on to another issue, the cyber incident, where, once again, we aggressively went at it, but I present to you a revised proposal. And that revised proposal was, the original piece was 14 positions. Some of those 14 positions, it's important to know that they were transferring in from other areas. However, in this fiscal year 2025 revised proposal, we reduced that number by four total jobs. So, councilors, I tried to look at this. The CFO and his team has done a fabulous job in taking the money off that we did have originally in there to the tune of $1.7 million. We've gone through that. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to review it. We only finished it, I believe, 3 hours ago. It was sent to everyone's emails. But looking to our future as a whole, all of the successes of the last 2 years, including the historic investment in infrastructure, has been a result of this council's call to action. In January, when we did our year in review, we looked back at a series of achievements made possible by fundings approved by this council, whether it was in school building, in bridge repairs, Beaver Brook, which is soon to come online, Central Street, which we have forgotten about because it's wide open and ready for business, but major roadways, sidewalk improvements, pavement preservation. Currently, we're about to see a blitz of school building projects using almost 80% in funding from MSBA ARP. Getting started this summer, there are 2 major packages, thanks to you. Thanks to this council for moving forward. Thank you to DPW and our Finance Committee for pulling this all together to make it happen. This truly has been 2 years of hard work when I'm about to rattle off the number of projects. 4 schools, 6 projects. The Wang is getting a roof and a boiler. The Robinson Middle School is getting windows and doors. The Shaughnessy Elementary is a boiler. The McAuliffe Elementary, a roof. Other things being done. Once again, at the Butler is a boiler. The Bartlett, another boiler. Robinson Middle School is getting a boiler as well. Roof at the Shaughnessy and the McAvenue is getting a boiler. This is what's happening. This is what has happened, and this is what we're excited to talk about. Also, in this budget, you'll see a $32.5 million in capital plan. This administration has taken all of the information from the men and women behind you who work on this every single day, as well as the commitment by this council to continue to invest in infrastructure, replace equipment, and most importantly, our building improvements. The major capital projects in FY25, if this is approved, would be $12 million additional in roadways. This has been no small feat, councilors. We've been doing this now. This is the 3rd time we've done this in a budget. As most of you know, there are approximately 280 miles of roadway, the majority of which we own. We've also started something new, a $3 million for firehouse improvements, which we're currently waiting for the owner project manager. That's $3 million that we've never spent. Is that what's going to need to bring them all up to par? Probably not, but we need to spend that $3 million within the next year. And we anticipate future asks of the council to make sure that we bring our firehouses up to compliance. There's $2 million in there for the St. Jean d'Arc improvements. And I want to say thank you very much to the school committee, who did a fabulous job on a 7-0 vote. And thank you very much to Superintendent Liam Skinner for believing that this project is worthy of doing. This is going to be groundbreaking, and this is something that I think we're all going to be proud of once this school opens. We also have $500,000 for pocket parks. Many times the councilors have come to us and asked for something that just is a little bit out of our reach, out of that $5,000, $7,000 reach, and it's something that I think that we can really get aggressive on to dress up some of our pocket parks. $2 million, which all the council has been very in favor of, for the Colley Stadium complex. This, hopefully this coming September, I want to say, the Assistant City Manager, as well as the Assistant City Manager at DPD, is working on improvements over at the Colley Stadium. And I know that Wastewater is working on other improvements out in front. $500,000 for new vehicles, $1 million investments in tech and cybersecurity, $8 million more in other capital, ADA improvements, equipment culverts, LFD fire replacements, environmental remediation over at Grand Manor, traffic signalization, which is another piece, heat island mitigation, planning, district improvements, and open space and park improvements. As 2025 fiscal year is upon us, I believe it is vital we revisit all of this, all of the recent successes that we've had. The allocation of millions of dollars towards roadway improvements stands as a testament to this commitment, to this commitment to this council. This is an exciting time to be here. Our dedication to improving the educational environment for our students is evident through the recent completion of projects that never would have thought to be done. Over at the Riley, Sullivan, Pine, and looking ahead, the Bailey, the Daly, and the Bartlett schools all slated for upgrades in the exterior this year of pavement. This is exciting because it exemplifies our commitment to providing top-tier facilities to our young learners. In addition to infrastructure enhancements, our focus on school improvements extends to crucial systems within the institution. Replacement of exhaust systems that I mentioned, boilers, and everything before. I recognize, councilors, very much being in the position that you folks have been in. But the decision to implement tax increases or fees is never easy. However, it's essential to acknowledge and commend the tireless effort that each of you has put forth in championing this transformative changes within our city. It starts with the council. The council gives me the opportunity to continue to invest in these critical projects. We can collectively work together that will elevate the quality of life for all the hardworking residents who call Lowell home. So I thank you all very much. I look forward to approving this budget, and let us continue to strive and build a brighter, more vibrant future for all of the residents of the city of Lowell. Thank you all very much.
So open the meeting to a public hearing.
Can I just, before you do that, could I make a motion that we continue this to a further date? Because we just got this information at 4 o'clock. It's a $583 million budget. I put weeks into this stuff, and to get changes within that period of time and not have them readily available, I don't even know what we're doing with the 4 positions or anything, because I haven't really, truthfully, had an opportunity to even look at those cuts or look at the cuts that were given to us when we were sitting here. I just came in from North Carolina today, flew in to do this, and then fly out to go back to North Carolina. So for me to look at this, I think it's unfair to get these 2 hours before a meeting in an email and say that there's changes to this budget, and we'll go over it. But I'd like to make a motion that we continue this to Saturday.
Motion by Councilor Getchia,
Second.
second by Councilor Robinson. Roll call.
Mr. Mayor,
No.
Councilor Mercer.
Yes.
Council Janess.
No.
Council Lady.
No.
Council Mercy.
no.
Council Newman.
No.
Council Robinson.
Yes.
Council Mayor.
No.
Council Scott.
No.
Council Young.
No.
Council Chow.
No.
So what I do now is I can open the meeting for public.
Mr. Mayor,
Favor-
one question through you to the city solicitor. Is this an open meeting violation where the public doesn't have a chance to look at these in the 48-hour period, and the council was presented it in an email?
Solicitor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So no, it wouldn't be. In the vote that was taken on the 21st to accept this timely budget, there's actually language specifically in there that states any revisions can come from the city manager between that time and now. It's specifically in that vote.
Councilor Mercer?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First off,
So it's a public hearing. Do you want to open it for the public, those in favor, and then those against, and then go to the council? Does that make sense?
sure.
Okay, all right.
I was going to ask in my little presentation here to let the public speak first. So I guess you might have read my mind. I didn't know you were psychic, but that's okay.
So let's open the public hearing. All those who want to speak in favor? In favor? In favor? That portion of the meeting is closed. All those in opposition? In opposition? In opposition? That portion of the meeting is also closed. I need a motion to adopt before discussion by Councilor Yam, seconded by Councilor Mercia. Councilor Mercia, go ahead.
Thank you. If we were talking about a high school, this place would be flowing out of the rafters. We're talking about a budget, and there's not one person ready to speak. But I'm ready to speak, and I just want to say that, first off, I'm very impressed with this budget. It was very, very informative in that I had questions that reading upon further in this budget answered a lot of the questions that I was thinking about. And if you want to get a good education about politics and budgets, you learn it all in this book. It was amazing. Every year it surprises me, it gets even better. A lot of work went into that budget. And I have done a thorough overview of this budget as well as the 5-year capital improvement plan. A lot of thought went into both, in my personal opinion. We could sit here for a week and make cuts, which no doubt other councilors feel to be the proper way to cut a little more out of this budget. And I'm not upset. I'm very grateful to come here. I know I didn't realize, but another $1.7 million was cut. All I know is I'm thrilled that it's been cut. That's even better. We must choose, though, raising the bar and addressing challenges by making strategic investments, because that's what I heard from every member of this council when they asked for better streets, cleaner neighborhoods, equal pay, and compensation for employees comparable to surrounding communities, and to improve public safety. That is very, very important, and I don't know anybody that didn't support that. So if you want it, you have to pay. It's called an investment. It's called raising the bar. It's called, you can't have it both ways. So I'm happy to see that 1.7 was already cut. I'm happy. That saved me some time as well. This budget was presented to address council goals. This budget reflects what this council expressed to the manager through motions, through requests, through suggestions. We're not here to hurt anybody. We're here to do a job, see if there is any fat. We could sit here for a week and probably cut another $2,000. I did everything that I could. I know that there are councilors that have questions and suggestions, things that I probably overlooked, so I'll welcome their input. Now, I was going to suggest, Mr. Mayor, that we recognize the public and let them speak first, but you already did that. You can see the places barging, breaking the door down to get in here to say, please cut my taxes. I mean, it's open to the public. Then we could go through each department, not line item by line item, and ask every council member, do you have a question or concern, then move to the next department. I believe there are about, 29 departments or 30 or whatever to that degree. I would even support myself going over the 10 o'clock rule for the sake of getting the job done and not prolonging this duty. But I think that we should go department by department, and I would make that in the form of a motion because we're here to do a job. We're not here to impress anybody or pander to the camera or whatever. We all want to do our job. We all want to cut money. And maybe I overlooked something, but I'd make it in the form of a motion that we go department by department. If any of my colleagues have concern about a particular item, fine. I certainly feel great about it.
I second it, Mr. Mayor.
Motion by Councilor Mercer to go department by department for discussion. Any comments on that? Councilor Gitcha?
Mr. Mayor, before we do that, can we also include revenues with that? Because there is a revenue piece that goes to this budget. It isn't just department by department cuts. So if we
Yeah,
can-
so Obviously, it's a budget hearing, it's all encompassing. I have no issue, and if the council wants to agree, open it up altogether. If you want to start at Councilor Chow and go right down the line and ask any question you like about any part of the budget altogether. If there's follow-ups based on that, to chime in with the, to the manager or the CFO or whatnot. So however you want to do it, I mean, the motion by Councilor Mercia seems just. All departments are in the budget to begin with. If it's easier for me, it's just to start with Councilor Chow and work our way all the way down to Councilor Yum. But however you want to do it is fine. So absolutely, Councilor, yes. Anything else?
Voting yes on this, will we start with revenues and then go to departments as the budget's outlined, or are we going to go to departments and then go back to revenues?
Well, we have a motion on the floor right now to deal with. Councilor Chow?
That's what I'm trying to clarify, is if I vote yes, will we start at revenues and go through, or are we starting at departments and not including revenues? That's what I'm asking.
So how about this?
Department by department, and then revenues.
Take a suggestion. If you go to Councilor Chow or Councilor Gitchu or Councilor Robinson or whatnot, if you want to start with revenues and go to departments and then go to how you're going to pay for something or whatnot, we can do that. Everybody gets their fair time. And if there are follow-up questions at the end, we can go back to do those. Does that make sense with everybody? Any other suggestions? If not, Mr. Clerk, roll call.
Council Dakota.
Yes.
Council Gitchi.
No.
Council Janes.
Yes.
Council Leahy.
No.
Council Mercia.
Yes.
Council Newman.
Yes.
Council Robinson.
No.
Mayor Rourke.
Yes.
Council Scott.
Yes.
Council Yem.
Yes.
Council Chow.
Yes.
Okay, so do we want to start with Councilor Chow and work our way down? And go ahead, Councilor Mercer.
So we're going to start with Councilor Chow, and he's going to, I thought we'd go to the first department, any questions,
Fine, baby. Okay.
like we do every year. I don't know why we could change it. Department, the first department, anybody have any questions? Nope, move approval on that one.
Right.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Councilor Chow.
I think that just to clarify just the situation, I think what you're asking for, if any of the councilors want to make any comment or statement before we go through by department, but now that we are going to go department by department, as Councilor Mercy mentioned, we go department by department and ask if any of the councilors have any questions or concerns about anything. But for my part, so that way I don't miss the opportunity, as Councilor Mercy also had opportunity to speak about this budget here in front of us. If you would allow me 2 minutes, and I'm sure that would be allowed to all the councilors as well, before they have any questions on any particular department. And I think, when you have an experienced councilor like Councilor Mercy go in front of you, she already covered all the bases already of what is important, the logistic and the philosophy behind it. I too, regardless how each of the department get vote up or down, overall, I will support this budget. I really appreciate the managers and the CFO and the whole administration really put forward the package ahead of time, and the brief explanation beginning that you're focusing on the quality of life and the economic development. I think that's very, very forward-looking. When you talk about quality of life, it doesn't come free. There's a cost to it, expense to it. And we live in the 5th largest community in the Commonwealth, about 350 communities, and we're always trying to compare ourselves to the surroundings. But as Councilor Mercia mentioned, the surrounding towns, they have less people, so different economies altogether. But what's important to Lowell is the quality of life. And as Councilor Mercia mentioned, there'll be cost to it if we want to raise our families here, have our children go to the best schools, enjoy the parks, enjoy the public services, enjoy have a clean street, the trash pickup, and so forth. There's a cost to it. None of us is happy having it hit so close to our pockets, but it's a tough decision to make. And I want to thank the manager and CFO for making this tough stance on it. And the economic development, I like the part about having many of the bigger companies come to the city, like Draper, working with Link, LINC, having the type of job investment in the future. A lot of things that go into the budget, as Councilor Mercia mentioned. You talk about politics and the economies and business and the residents, all roll up in one. You can go by department. We'll probably disagree in some aspect of it, but overall, this is a good presentation. This is a good budget for the fiscal year. Thank you.
Any other comments before we start? Okay, first up would be the city council. Questions about the city council?
Mr. Mayor, I should have been a little bit more courteous and say, if there's anybody on the council that wants to make an opening overview statement, such as I did, you have every right to do that, and I failed to think about that. But yes, that's a good idea if there's any city council that wants to make a statement.
Sure.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to recuse myself on the finance department because, have family members work in that department.
As we go along, I'm sure that will happen sooner or later. So, you know what, again, so we're not bounced around. Councilor Dakota, anything you want to start off with?
I'll hold my comments until we go department by department.
Councilor Getchia? Councilor Janess? Councilor Mercer already spoke. Councilor Noon?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This proposed budget reflects a 6% increase, $32 million that include everything, general fund and enterprise fund. As the manager alluded to earlier, most of the increases on fixed costs. The pension assessment, health insurance premium, charter school assessment, all of the Lowell Fire Department overtime, debt service, and enterprise fund. I understand that. Look, I do understand the increase because we do have to have a budget that must be responsible to the need of our resident or constituent, fiscally responsible, and build on the foundations that deliver a city service to our resident. I do have a number of questions when come time to look at department by department. A number of requests. I respect the manager and his team to come back with, listens to us and come back with $1.7 million cut. That's a good thing. But I do have some other question and concern and maybe a possible other cut when time comes to discuss this department by department. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Robinson?
Thank you. I'd like to thank, obviously, the administration and all department heads for working to present a budget again. And I'm hearing, they listened to some of the priorities of the council, the residents, looking for a balanced approach. We do have increases that are unavoidable in some areas. How we implement whatever we need to implement to offset those increases is, I think, we have room for discussion. That's why we're all here tonight. I see there is a balanced approach here. And again, if the budget is a reflection of our priorities, I see proposed cuts in some areas that residents have prioritized, in areas of quality of life. And I see increases in salaries and wages and other upper level positions. And I mean, I'm hoping we can kind of dial in some departments and see where can we find some additional savings, because the men and women that have been turning the tools have been doing a lot more with less for quite some time. And I know we've stepped up, increased some pay to retain and to kind of incentivize and show that we support our employees. But then some of these other issues, I see for continuity, we're looking to add positions. But in the past, I mean, upper level has had to fulfill roles periodically to like step in and cover those bases as well. So I think it's a lead by example in some instances. So I think that we do have some room for cuts. I think we have some wish list items that are included that could lead to additional cuts. So I look forward to the conversation, but thank you.
Councilor Scott?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would agree with Councilor Mercia that I think this budget was very well done. The areas of concern that I think many of us have brought forward, the manager is attempting to address, including the trash fee and the opera positions, which were a big concern of mine in having to fund those later on. I'm very concerned about that. I think it's very reflective of the many motions made by councilors on this floor, from expanding art in the city, better DPW controls, streets, culvert replacement. And it also shows that we have a lot of work to do on some big items like education around recycling. Bringing back, I think we need to bring back our solid waste and recycling committee. It was the group that actually put together a lot of the education work around recycling and brought this program forward that we have right now. So there's certainly work that we can do, but in general, I think this is a very good base. Thank you.
Councilor Yem?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to thank Mr. Manager and your financial team for listening to our resident, particularly on the trash increase. So instead of 200, minimum 100. That's appreciated. And other area, I know minimal increase to keep up with the cost of living and the inflation. As we can hear and see that many cities and towns around Lowell are struggling try to keep up with the budget. Some cities and some towns try to override 2.5, while the city has an excess of $13 million on the proposition 2.5, that the city not trying to max it out. This way is a good way, and the residents should be really understand that and appreciate what this administration have done. I also want to congratulate Mr. Manager and your team. When we were elected 2.5 years ago, we do not have a plan for capital improvement. The road, the building that the city owned, falling apart. So I, for one, say, no more kicking the can down the road. We need to do something. And you also tell us that it's going to be painful the first 2 or 3 years, and I ask the resident also to be patient, but they can see the fruit of their sacrifice, that our city has been improved, the roads, the sidewalk, and all others public building had been updated. Particularly in my district, District 7, we see more of the housing development that is needed in the city of Lowell. In June 15 or 16, Acre Crossing will be having a ribbon cutting. That will be 32 affordable home ownership for residents who otherwise will not have an opportunity to own a piece of American dream that will build generational wealth. In addition to that, there are 2 more projects, Suffolk Place, which is next to Acre Crossing, that will be on board another 35 units. And then the former, the food bank on Broadway Street, it's going to be another 52 apartment. In addition, there's more coming. And this is what I'm grateful. And before I end it, I just want to thank our men and women behind me, the head of the different department. I know you have sacrificed. You may not have all the money that you need to do to run your department, but you work together and try to work with what we have to make our city a best and a place for to raise our children and to live. So I appreciate that as a counselor, and I thank every one of you and the staff who are not here, and they work so hard to keep our city safe and then a best place to raise our children and to live. Again, thank you to everyone.
Great. Anything else? All right, let's get at it. First off, you have the appropriation for the city council. Councilor Getchia?
I'd like to propose a cut of $25,000 to the line item for my salary in the city council. I make a motion.
Seconded by Councilor Robinson. Any discussion?
One other thing, Mr. Mayor. The,
You made a motion, right? I just want Council Scott had a hand up. I'll go back
Yeah,
to
all
it.
right.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. I guess just a question. My concern over making a cut like that is not, we know that Council Getchia does not take the salary, is unable to. If Council Getchia decides to leave or for health reasons or something has to resign, what happens when the replacement comes in? Do we have to we can transfer that from another fund, I guess, but it's just another.
Mr. Manager?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much, Councilor. We do have to budget for 100% of the positions, but in this manner, we would have to make a transfer from another location. So, when we're writing a budget, we fund 100% of the positions.
Council Getchia?
Thank you.
does the manager also want someone to make a recommendation to make the cut to the advertising in the council? Because it's on this sheet, so are we making the recommendations now, or are we waiting till later, or?
Want to just take up your motion first?
Okay, yep.
Roll call on Council Getchia's motion.
Council Dakota.
No.
Council Getchia.
Yes.
Council Janess.
Yes.
Council Leahy.
No.
Council Mercia.
No.
Council Noon.
Yes.
Council Robinson.
Yes.
Mayor Rourke.
No.
Council Scott.
Yes.
Council Yem.
No.
Council Chow. Yes. 6 yeas. Passes.
Yes.
So just a quick question before we go back to Council Getchia. Is that position now eliminated, Mr. Manager? Or is that still there under zero?
We've done it in the past, Mr. Mayor, so we did cut the funding in the past.
I thought it'd be just like.
Could we amend the motion to make it a $1 position, so the position's not cut?
I ask a question first, we get back to anybody else?
Thank you.
I was under the impression that if we take all the salary from position, it's position that's cut, not the salary.
But
Just find yourself, Council Getchia. Mr. CFO? Or Mr. Solicitor? Who wants it?
Solicitor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, it wouldn't eliminate the position. It would just be an unpaid position.
Great. All right.
but
Council Getchia, all you.
Through you to Manager Golden, do you want us to make motions as we go along for the sheet that you gave us for the cuts, or is that something that you want us to make the motions? Okay, I would.
Maybe the easiest thing is just to adopt that sheet altogether, make a motion to adopt the recommendations of reductions by the city manager and vote on that sheet altogether instead of going line by line by line. Just a suggestion.
eliminated.
Motion by Council
completely.
Getchia to do the 1.7 cut right now. All right. Second by Council Dakota. Roll call.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. Is this roll call voting on to accept all these cuts as one package?
Yes.
Okay,
Can
thank
I
you.
speak on that before we make,
Sure, good. Yep.
sign this?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. So just, I appreciate the effort that went into the cuts this afternoon or all day today. The only things that I don't like that I see on here are the cuts to the fire department for repair and maintenance, the DPW, L&B, the 72,000, and then the library. So those three cuts add up to 205, 156. Would have been nice, I don't know what the how close we are on the school electricity, but I was wondering if we could take that out of that, but to keep the money in those other three accounts and take a chance on the electric. I didn't know if you had any comments on the
Mr. Baldwin?
school electric.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Maybe to add a little bit of context for the public and about what's happening with the sort of legislative order here. So what's before the council tonight is a revised order as well as a schedule that reconciles each one of the departmental appropriations, which are broken up into two categories, statutory categories: personal services, which is salaries and wages, overtime, et cetera; ordinary expenditures, which are essentially everything else in the department. And what we have done to arrive at this figure is to reach out to each one of the departments. We knew we had a number we had to arrive at, and so we tried to take each one of the departmental appropriations proportionally as an amount we needed to cut. And then we said, so we arrived at about 5%, 8%, sent that to the department heads and asked them to make the decisions on the cuts. So these cuts you see before you are at the suggestion of the department head in charge of each one of the departments. And so as we go along, believe we adopted this as a whole and will revise the order accordingly. But specifically, Counselor, to your comment about those items where amounts were reduced, like repair and maintenance of vehicles, certainly your comment is understood and well taken and noted, but we had increased that somewhat at the last minute. So the reduction is to that increase because it was not long ago that the Senate version of the state budget was released, and by virtue of that version of the state budget, the city did a little bit better, and so we had a little bit more expense that we could give to departments, this being one of the areas. So essentially by cutting that, we're kind of getting back to the place we were with our original proposal. But your question to electricity, we did speak with Ms. Moses in the Sustainability Division of DPD about those budgets, and we believe the amount that we are proposing a cut to the school electric and gas account, but we think that's about as far as we can go according to Ms. Moses' analysis. So I hope that addresses your question, Counselor.
No, it does, and I appreciate that. These three here stuck out to me, and so I hope we'll be fine. Thank you.
Council Scott and Council Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just ask that we possibly consider bringing each one up when we talk about the department budget, just because these were introduced this afternoon. The public doesn't know what we're voting for as a whole. So I think it probably makes sense for us to bring each one up as we go along. I don't want to add confusion, but I just think in the interest of...
We have a motion on the floor. There's a second.
Yep, motion on the floor.
Council Robinson?
Thank you. I think to bundle this is kind of tough because there's some key areas here. I mean, currently I believe we have, 2 ladder trucks that are down, one with a shock or something and the other one with a brake situation. And I mean, yes, we've invested a large sum in new equipment, but we are currently waiting for a lot of that equipment to be delivered. And I'm very concerned to see, say, $100,000 from repair and maintenance, where we're trying to keep trucks running at all costs to prevent brownouts in the fire department. I think looking at land and buildings, the various school projects, that's something I would need clarification on, because again, we have a lot of projects going on, and I mean, $72K cut from that seems pretty steep. Another thing that I'm concerned with would be, I believe it's from case for public art maintenance line item. We're increasing public art across the city, and so I mean, a cut of $30,000 is still significant when we're looking to maintain an increase in public art. So I mean, I think there's quite a few things that would need clarification, as well as, I mean, recreation department salaries and wages temporary. We look to onboard how many kids, and if you take a look around the city, there's plenty of work to be done. So I mean, even a minimal cut of 4,600 could be an additional kid that doesn't receive a job this year, especially with a waiting list of people. So I just think, some of these line items I think are great. Other ones, I mean, I think we need to take a hard look at and see the cemetery, DPW cemetery professional services. Well, I mean, we have like a 3 or 4 man crew down there that's generating revenue for the city by doing the burials. If they need professional services brought in, why are we looking to cut that? I mean, what they're doing themselves is going to offset any cuts that we could propose. So I think I can't support bundling this as a package. I think line by line on this would make more sense. Thank you.
So, if I may, the budget is based on these cuts. There was an outcry over the trash increase. Sounds like, to me, the manager heard that outcry. So, by not going up to 200, going to 100, to balance the budget at 2.5% required the cuts. As a council, we cannot add to the budget, right? So that's the situation that we're in. We keep, I'm gonna move money around and whatnot, but in order to pass the budget, we are not allowed as a council to add to it. Councilor Mercia?
I make a motion that we bundle these cuts.
It's been made.
A roll call.
Okay, by Council Mercer, second by, right, you don't want to do it.
I
Right,
second.
Second by
It was
Council.
already, that motion was made.
Right,
Council
so-
Getchier, Council, yeah.
Council Getchia is going to take back that because he can't
Okay.
make a motion. Okay.
All right.
So we got Council Mercer and Council Chow.
I'd like to recuse myself from this vote,
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Mayor.
Yep. Council Dakota.
Just a comment here, because I'm a little confused, maybe because it's my first budget. So when we received this today for $1.7 million, by my count, 22 out of the 29 departments have lowered their budgets. Well, when I do my budget at the school department, and my boss tells me to give me a budget, then that's the budget I'm giving him. I'm not going back and say, so what was this extra fluff that they had in their departments that they just said now, well, we could think we can give you more? I'm not understanding how we came up with $1.7 million if we already, all the department heads gave their budgets already.
I think the 1.7, Counselor, is the difference of $100 in the trash fee. So every department was gone to again to say make necessary cuts to make that work. CFO, is that
I
correct?
understand your point, Mr. Mayor, but when I hand in my budget, that's my budget. That's, that I know what I can spend. I'm not putting fluff into my budget. So when you go back to 22 out of the 29 heads, and they're giving you back some of the money, it just raises my eyebrow. That's all, and I appreciate your time.
Council Janess?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a procedural question based on this and the vote we're about to take. As you mentioned, Mr. Mayor, we cannot add to the budget, we can only cut. And as Solicitor Williams mentioned earlier, the vote to have this public hearing mentioned that the city manager could make adjustments up until the meeting, and that's this adjustment. So if this is the adjustment, do we actually have to vote on these? Because this is what is being presented to us, or do we only have to vote on cuts up above this?
Procedurally, if he wants me to.
Mr. Clerk?
Council, I think procedurally, I think if we're going to vote to adopt these recommendations from the city managers, reductions, which is in your purview to vote reductions in the budget, at that point, if those voted in, then the original vote that was put out there before the revisions were made would have to vote to amend that to the current number that would be there, and then would vote to adopt the budget as amended. That makes sense.
Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind, I think the solicitor might have something to add on this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'll quickly read some of the language from that vote because I think it will clarify everything. As I said, with the understanding that any recommended revisions as may be submitted by the city manager at a later date and prior to the final approval of said budget by the city council shall collectively be considered the proposed budget for fiscal year 25. So to your point, Counselor, that is now the budget. The proposed budget.
So that we don't need to vote on that motion because this is already in the proposal of the overall budget.
I would agree, but a motion was made. So, yeah. So, Council Mercia?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I vote for this, which I support it, I must say a disclaimer that I have a relative that works in DPW, but none of these cuts here have anything to do with employees' pay, right? So if I vote for this, I won't be hauled off in handcuffs, right? So really, I can vote for this? Mr. Solicitor, can I vote for this?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yes, you can. It's a
Thank
part
you.
of the whole budget in its entirety, so all of the councilors are allowed to vote on the budget.
Okay, thank you.
All good? Roll call. So the motion is to accept the cuts that are already in the budget.
Well, we don't need
Mr.
to.
Mayor, according to the solicitor, there's no need. This is the presented amendment before we take a vote on the final budget. So this, by default, becomes part of the proposed budget.
There's a motion on the floor.
It's a
Councilor.
formality, I just made the motion.
Council Dakota. Council Getchia. Council Janess.
No.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Counsel Noon.
Yes.
Counsel Robinson.
No.
Mayor Rourke.
Yes.
Counsel Scott.
No.
Counsel Yem.
Yes.
Counsel Chow.
Yes.
6 yeas.
No harm in doubling up, right? Okay. So we're all set with the city council, the mayor's appropriation? Mayor's appropriation, Councilor Getchia?
So under the mayor's portion of the budget, travel went up by $10,000, but we haven't used travel. So I'm just wondering what the explanation is on why we're going to go up by $10,000.
Yeah, so my thinking as being the mayor was to be, I guess, inclusive of the entire council. If the council wanted, memberships to Massachusetts Municipal Association, or, if there was an opportunity to go to seminars to be reimbursed, I would like the entire council to be available for that through this part of my budget. It really is, the council's budget. I don't know if there's an appropriation for that in the city council part of it. But that was my thinking about in that scenario.
Currently, we only used, $1,500 out of the 5,000. So that's why I don't know why we need to go to 15, that's all. So I would make a motion to cut it by 5,000.
By Councilor Getchia. Seconded by Councilor Scott. Roll call.
Counsel Dakota.
No.
Counsel Getchia.
Yes?
Counsel Janessa.
No.
Counsel Leahy.
No.
Counsel Mercia.
No.
Counsel Noon.
No.
Counsel Robinson.
No.
Mayor Rourke.
No.
Counsel Scott.
No.
Counsel Yem.
No.
Councilor Chow, no.
Counsel Chow.
Next up, city clerk. Appropriation.
Move approval.
Move to approve by Councilor Scott, seconded by Councilor Child. In favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Next section is the city manager. It has a number of line items within that. Marketing, contingency, cable access, case. Any comments? Councilor Getchia?
Thank you, Mayor Rourke. Through you to the CFO. Last year, there was only one salaries permanent, but this year, there's two in this budget. Do we know why?
CFO?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Counselor, if you could help me understand, you said there's two salaries permanent?
Yeah, on page 149.
Bear with me one sec.
I'm just wondering why we broke one off.
Okay, I got it. Sorry about that. So the second, and I will disclaim, because this is the first time this is coming up and will likely come up again, that the way the budget is presented using the ClearGov tool is going to be very much different than what this council is used to, and that what the departments and the public are likely used to, and the way for many years that we've presented the budget book. And these account names and titles and the way that it's presented are fed directly from Munis. However, there is likely going to be some, perhaps some confusion about some of the nomenclature in the book. But specifically, I think you're asking about the salaries permanent at $113,883, and then the other one that says salaries permanent for $748,000. The difference being that the second one that appears in the book for $113,000 is the cable access budget. And so using the Comcast PEG money, the funds are appropriated in the city manager's office, but that goes to fund the Cregan studios for the schools. And so the staff at the school department who work on the public access channel 22, they charge their budget to essentially to our budget. They charge their time to our budget. And in the previous iteration of the budget, so FY '24, '23, and backwards, we split that up and called it the cable access budget. It's probably a good idea maybe to split it up in the future, or maybe name it a little different. But that's the difference.
Some of the hard parts with this budget compared to the last one is like if you look at DPW, none of it lines up with the overtime because it got broken into each individual department, which we've never seen before. And Munis doesn't run the reports like that. So like lands and buildings overtime and salaries and wages are all inclusive in the DPW. And then when it breaks it out, there's really no way of following where the monies went. And that's the hard part of this budget right now, is exactly what you're saying, is when you start splitting it out, you can't see, well, where did the increase come from? Because there are increases in some departments. Some people got extremely large raises, and it's hard to even follow where the raises are coming from because the monies are so hard to find because it's the first year of this process. So my other thing, back to the mayor, is that in the training reimbursement seminars, it started with 10 grand and we transferred out 4,500. Do we know why we transferred out the 4,500 out of that account? Are we doing the training and reimbursements?
Within the city manager's section?
Yep. So this year we transferred out $4,500 out of that account.
We'd have to look back through the audit detail, but that was not in the current fiscal year.
It's in the current fiscal year,
I mean the FY '25 budget year.
Yeah, so
rather.
that's why I'm asking, why do we need more money in there if we're transferring funds out? So why aren't we lowering those places rather than lowering other places? Like we looked at council and agent, we lost $5,000 somewhere there. But we're not using monies in these areas, but we're transferring them out. Also in conferences, seminars, and education, it started with $25,000 and we transferred out $11,800, and we still have almost $5,000 left. So there's $16,000, about $9,000 was spent. And those are the questions. And if we're transferring out of them, why are we asking for the same or more monies this year?
So we're already through the mayor's part of the budget, right? Once the city council stuff?
I thought we were on the city manager.
Right. But you're talking about the mayor's
No,
reimbursement?
I'm in the manager.
Oh, I apologize. I'm sorry. All right, go ahead. Mr. CFO?
I'm sorry.
Sure. The amount of budget that was requested by the manager for training is for next year is to expand what has been a successful training program with Middlesex and doing DEI training. We also use the DEI budget, which falls under sort of the HR section, but also professional development, like the training that has been ongoing with DPW and the MWI, Mr. Mark Way, and his leadership training that he's been doing. These are accounts, and it may be that a transfer is made to better classify it to another budget account, but it is certainly going to be used.
The DEI initiative, well, you brought that up. Over there, out of the $30,000, only roughly $10,000 was expended this year. So when I'm looking at these accounts, there's monies in there that we can look at and offset at least 1.7 million more of this budget so that there is no trash increase, or a percentage could be lower, whatever way people think. That's the question to this budget is, there's a lot of money. Last year we had 15 million left over. This year we have roughly going to project around 12 million left over. And these are the questions that are coming up. And why aren't we cutting these places and balancing it that way? I would make a motion to cut the manager's budget by $25,000.
Second? No second? All right, move to approve the city manager's budget by Councilor Mercia, seconded by Councilor Leahy, Councilor Janess. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Passes. Moving on to finance. Finance consists of finance, budget, auditing, purchasing, assessing, treasurer, and human relations. Councilor Gitcha.
Mr. Mayor, in over 35 years of government, I've never seen raises the size that you see in this finance department budget. Never. You're looking at some went up 18% in the area of $34,000. And you see others at $16,000 all in 1 year. And I've never seen that type of raise. And when we look at our workforce, how do we justify that to other people? So in my end, I think this budget needs to be cut also by $70,000, the bottom line.
Is that a motion?
Yes, a motion to cut it by $70,000.
$70,000, seconded by Councilor Robinson. Any discussion, Councilor Janess?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just curious if either the manager or the CFO can go into how you came to the conclusions of the salaries, because those are big jumps. It jumped out to me too, so I think the public deserves to hear how we got to these numbers.
Mr. Manager, Mr. CFO?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So I think one of the things that's appearing in the budget is that in FY24, that was prior to the wage adjustment program, and those funds were budgeted in the FY 2024 within the manager's reserve. So within this current fiscal year, FY 2024, we have transferred out of the manager's reserve into those departmental line items. But what we're seeing now is the FY25 budget is picking up or reflecting those increased raises. And so the series of adjustments that was done across the city, beginning in DPW, but then through the clerical employees, as well as most of the staff throughout City Hall and some of the city offices, those adjusted wages are reflected in the FY 2025 budget. And so that is one of the explanations as to why, if you look at FY24 versus FY25, it will look like a larger jump.
Thank you. So at this point, the numbers in the proposed budget, do they reflect employees' current salaries with some small margin for future adjustments, or are these aspirational numbers?
CFO?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and that's an excellent question. This leads me to sort of a larger point as it relates to the appropriation order in the budget, but your question hits on it, that the amounts budgeted for FY25 reflect the adjusted salaries pursuant to what I just mentioned, that wage adjustment to bring employees up to par, to market value. What is not reflected within the departmental line items for personal services, at 6/30/2024, we will reach the end of the current union contracts with our 17 collective bargaining units. We have made reservation for what we believe to be funding sufficient to fund all of those collective bargaining agreements once they're settled. That is within, which has already been approved, but within the reserve for wages, that number within the city manager's division. So these salaries do not reflect that, but will be transferred as those contracts are settled and transfers are made after the ratification of the memorandums of understanding by the council.
Okay, thank you. I understand that and appreciate that. And I'm not trying to pick on you, but you're the first one we're coming to on this where your salary, Mr. Baldwin, is significantly higher in this budget than it was in the last budget. So I guess my question is, as we vote these for some of those higher deputy folks like yourself and some others, are we voting to give you a raise at this point, a significant raise, or do you already have that raise and we're just voting to make sure the budget reflects what the city has already obligated themselves to pay you?
Mr. Manager?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, through the council. Council, a vote in the affirmative would give that raise, but it's a contractual raise. It was a negotiation that I had with the CFO to get to the point where we are today.
Thank you. So the city is already obligated to spend that regardless of what's in the budget.
Councilor Noon?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to either the managers or the CFO, along the line that Councilor Janess's question. In the manager's reserve, or one can call it contingency account, $3.5 million. And that, what you're talking about is to use that money to pay or transfer to the department after the negotiation with union? And how many of those 17 union has been negotiated or has been complete?
CFO?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And we just wanted to confer with the city solicitor because we are still in active negotiations with those unions. And procedurally, what will happen is the unions will ratify their, on their side, pursuant to their bylaws. And then we will bring forward to the council for ratification and to authorize the manager to enter into those contracts. But to answer your question, I want to say the number is 6 or 7 that we have come to tentative agreement with. We have 17 total, so we still have a number of units still to go. We are bargaining in good faith with all of those unions, and we expect to bring the ones that are settled to the council before the end of this fiscal year for approval, and they will be funded by transfer in the 2025 budget as the contract will begin 7/1. 2024.
So this money being used not only based on the salary now, this is an additional cost of living that the managers and his team negotiated with the union when it's settled. Is that correct?
Yes, it is the product of negotiation, but there would be a cost of living adjustment to each one of those units, and that funding sufficient for all of those, we believe it to be sufficient for all the units, is included in the city manager's contingency reserve for wages in the FY 2025 budget.
Do you, again, either you or the managers anticipate of using that $3.5 million on those the 17 union after it's settled?
Yes, Councillor.
Thank you for now.
Councilor Robinson?
Thank you. Again, that's, as my colleagues brought up, we're seeing some significant increases in salaries and wages in some areas. And looking at the amended cuts, there's only a $50 cut to finance amongst all the departments, but yet we're seeing some significant increases in that department. So I don't understand.
So it was done on a percentage basis, and the whole of the finance department's budget is $1,000 for printing the budget. So I'd be happy to give more back, but I only have $1,000 to give, I think.
Councilor Getchia?
Mr. Mayor, just through you to the city solicitor, just for clarification, when the manager negotiates a contract with an employee outside that's a ordinance employee, the city council no longer has the right to see those contracts while they're being negotiated like it used to because of the vote that the council took? Is that the way it happened?
Mr. Mayor, could you say that again? Sorry.
What is the arrangement between the manager making contracts with other employees without the city council seeing those contracts in the end? Like, I don't know how long the CFO's contract is right now. Is it 1 year or 3 years? Did he get 20% each year? Did he get, we don't have an idea. I just see it in a budget, so I don't know that answer.
Mr. Mayor, I mean, that's certainly, whether it's with the police, fire, police chief, fire chief, I mean, this is sort of the process, and that the negotiation will happen between the city manager and that individual, and then it'll be presented to the council.
Was this because of the change in the ordinance that this council voted on? Because we used to see these, and you could only move them a certain amount on each step and not tiers and over and up and around. So we used to see all of these things. So when they used to move people, I thought, and it was never this much. That's why I'm just wondering, going forward, how do we see these contracts and how do we make adjustments to them? Or is it just this is the way our government works now?
Well, specifically with the CFO, he's not an ordinance employee. Because of his title, it's statutory in nature, which allows for him to have a contract. So it's different than the rest of the ordinance employees. But typically, this is how this process works between the manager and the contract employees.
Okay, so if we try to make a cut in budget times right now, what effect would that have on the contract?
It would have no effect on the contract.
Thank you.
Motion on the floor to cut $70,000. Mr. Clerk, roll call.
Counselor Dakota.
Yes.
Counselor Getchia.
Yes.
Counselor Janess.
No.
Counselor Leahy.
No.
Counselor Mercia.
No.
Counselor Noon.
No.
Counselor Robinson.
Yes.
Mayor Rourke.
No.
Counselor Scott.
No.
Counselor Yem.
No.
Counselor Chow.
No.
Fail.
Next, moving on, Management Information Systems. Motion to approve first and then go for the cuts. Motion approved by Councilor Dakota, seconded by Councilor Yem. Councilor Dakota.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is concerning the MIS page on a little book that we've got here, 194, on the department personnel list. 40 years ago, I graduated from UMass Lowell and ended up minoring in MIS. And how I got the busing, I'm not sure, but I ended up having a couple of friends who were lot smarter than me and became MIS directors in large municipalities like Lowell. So I got on a conference call with both of them and gave them the whole 5 pages that we had here that I read and asked them what their opinion was. And curious enough, they both gave me the same answers, in that 6 of these positions were not needed. Those were the MIS Director Apps, the Cybersecurity Administrator, the Desktop Support Specialist, say both of them there, as well as the Application Specialist. They thought there was overlapping there and that the other positions could take those responsibilities. It just hit me that we were looking for 11 additional positions here, and speaking with other professionals, like I just said, that 5 of these positions, because we already hired the deputy last meeting at $140,000, that these 5 positions could be cut. I don't think it's fair unless Mr. Fernandez can come to the lectern and he can speak upon my suggestion that we remove those 5 positions from the budget.
Manager? Okay, yep, Mr. Fernandez.
I'm sorry, Counselor, it was really hard to hear you over here.
Sure.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Sure. So I am going to make a motion to remove 5 of your positions from the budget. One is the MIS Director of Apps. The other is a Cyber Security Administrator, 2 Desktop Support Specialists, and an Application Specialist. And I know you just said you had a difficult time hearing me from across the room, but I said that I'd spoken to 2 friends that are a lot smarter than me and were MIS directors in large municipalities like Lowell. So I'm guessing I'm asking you to defend your positions, but I am going to make the motion to remove those 5 positions.
Absolutely, Counselor. Thank you for the opportunity to address this. If I may, before doing so, I believe that there's also a couple of cuts already present or proposed.
I'm not even finished yet, actually. I would also make a motion that the 311 specialists that are here get moved to the city manager's office. And I'll let the city manager speak after Mr. Fernandez, if you don't mind.
So, Mr. Manager, so Councilor Dakota's question, is the ARPA cuts part of the 5 cuts of Dakota's put the motion on forward?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, through the council, the councilor is asking us to cut those positions in entirety from the ARPA side of it.
Did we already cut them earlier?
We did cut them, but we didn't cut the positions themselves. Cut the funding source, not the actual position from the job.
So the funding has been cut off?
We're going to take it back. That's
You're gonna
correct.
take it back?
That's correct.
Okay.
From ARPA. The 5 of those positions were funded by ARPA positions. So we're going to take those back. And then the discussion of 311, I think it's a great idea. We probably were going to have to do an order to change that.
I'm just thinking that the 2 people that you have in your office are already taking calls now. So why not take it away from the MIS department and
That's correct.
put it in your office?
That'd be correct, Council.
And if it doesn't work, then we can always put it back into the MIS. But I think those salaries could be, some money could be saved there.
That's fine.
So if the funding has already been taken away from Mr. Fernandez's department, we'd be looking at making a motion to remove the 2 311 positions, or the funding from MIS into your city manager's office, correct?
So I could be wrong, I can go to the solicitor. That should be addressed in a later public hearing through an ordinance. Is that correct, Mr. Manager? CFO? Mr. Solicitor, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I realize that this is a budget hearing. We're talking about all the different functions and all the moving pieces and all the departments, but the ability to assign personnel and the responsibilities of personnel, that falls strictly under the purview of the city manager and a planning form of government. So when we're making these cuts, it would be inappropriate for a counselor to take one position and have that position go somewhere else or to do something else. That would be an overstep. To cut flat from a department is fine, but the personnel responsibilities, that's solely under the city manager.
Mr. Manager, go ahead.
Councilor, if we could look at this in the future, the director and the 311 person coming over to the office, I think we can accomplish that goal.
Okay, I thank you for that.
Okay.
Mr. Manager, would you like me to address any of the other points?
Councilor, get your head first. Go ahead. No? Finance, go ahead.
So I'm not sure if you would still like me to address any of the other points, Mr. Manager.
So the positions that the council brought up have already been not funded, correct? And you're going to take care of the 301 thing, correct? Mr. CFO?
Yes, thank you. If I could just add a little bit of clarification, that is what the manager is proposing to do, to not fund them under ARPA. However, as a sort of procedural matter as it relates to the appropriation order, those are not included in the appropriation amount because they're funded by ARPA, which is an outside funding source. It was a grant that was already accepted by the council. And so I think the spirit of your intent, Councilor, is heard and received, and that is what the manager is going to do. But I don't believe there is any legislative action necessary to accomplish that. I think the manager can just execute based on your recommendation. There doesn't need to be any cut to the... They're not included in the appropriation order as is.
All right, those just be added to the fund, pretty much, right? That extra money? I lost you there.
So the line item for MIS does not include funding for the positions funded by ARPA because they're funded by ARPA.
Right.
As a practical matter, we will not fund 5 positions from ARPA, which was part of the prior proposal, but no action is needed for the appropriation order to do that.
I understand now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilor Mercia?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I will say that I'm not asking many questions because I picked up the phone previously and asked the questions that I needed answered anyway. So in an effort to save time, I harassed the departments and I asked these questions of the CFO and Sean Machado. And anyway, having said that, as you can see, on that line item for MIS, we did cut $112,903, which is a good chunk of money for that particular department, considering the fact that they had a cyber attack and went crazy all that time. And I applaud your efforts to try to straighten out something that I wouldn't know the first thing about, but I'm very proud of you. But I do want to take this opportunity, and I know it's a budget hearing, but when I came into City Hall this afternoon, I happened to see these screen TVs all over the place, and I was very, very impressed. It's in multi-languages. Anybody can come here, and they don't even have to ask anybody in any language, where is this department? All you do is press a button and it shows you an arrow where to go. I was very impressed by what I saw. That's what this City Hall building is, to be more friendly to the public. So you did a great job, and those that are involved in the manager's office, thank you very much. I just had to say that. Thank you.
Councilor Gitcha.
Thank you, Mayor Rourke. Currently, we have the software license and support line item, and currently we've only spent 33% of this year's budget of $900,000. Why are we increasing that by another $500,000 if we didn't spend it?
Mr. Fernandez.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Through Mr. Manager to the council. Historically, all of our software licenses are actually renewed in June. A lot of that is a function of when I joined the city. At the time when I joined in June of 2002, we were very off kilter in terms of our licensing throughout the organization. And one of the very first things I had to do was identify licensing requirements throughout the organization, which required a large investment in software licensing. Our software licensing is typically always due in June. That's something that the CFO and the city auditor have always accommodated to ensure when those POs come out in June because of the need to license software. Also, as everything else increases price-wise, a lot of software has increased significantly. In addition to that, there's been a lot of movement from having things locally on-premise or in-house on servers to living in the cloud. And living in the cloud has its own costs and its own cost increases that are pretty much outside of our control and are governed in large part just by the contracts that vendors have out there, whether it's something as simple as the vision software that's used by the assessor's office, which lives in the cloud, and they're projecting 20% increases each year in their software costs. In the Munis world, we moved, as you're aware, following the cyber event that we had, we moved things into a disaster recovery area, which was subsequently moved into the cloud, which also increased costs.
So currently in FY22, FY23, and in FY24, we've never seen it over the $900,000 mark. Why is there such a 50% increase in just this piece? And that's a lot of money, $500,000 to jump.
I agree, Councilor.
That's what the question is. And that I don't know that I got an answer or didn't get an answer because you're in like over my head with this thought process. So I'm just looking at the numbers on how did it go from here to there and why.
I apologize, Councilor, if I didn't address that accurately, but fundamentally it comes down to the software, the manner in which it's licensed. Much of this software was licensed to run on servers here at our facility, and many of these vendors have transitioned these licenses from running locally to running in the cloud, in the internet space. So when these tools move into the internet, their prices do go up significantly. A good example is Munis, which significantly increased. It was about a 25% to 33% increase overall to move it into the cloud.
So what you're telling us is you're going to use the same resources, and these resources have gone up 50%. That's basically what you're saying to us.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the data processing piece that we funded at $281,000 last year, We've only spent 15,000 of that. Is that another June bill?
Actually, sir, that is similar to the things that are in the cloud, Microsoft-based. This is what they call business intelligence software for 311, which we just put in the PO right now, hand in hand with what we're doing with our 311 system in order to start building the SQL servers. And I want to say I just wiped out that line item today in a purchase order for software in order to prepare for the 311 system.
I hope you understand what I'm looking at is we're at the end of May and only 5.5% of a extremely large account is spent. So then when you look at it and you look at past years, only $6,000 is spent in FY23 and only $8,700 in FY22. So when you see only $15,000 spent and you look at the historical data of this thing, you're saying, oh geez, why are we funding that much money? That's the whole question, and that's why I'm asking you these questions.
Those are excellent questions, Counselor, and in that case, those, in order to move forward with 311, that includes a large database infrastructure implementation, and those tools are tools that, similar with 311, I know there have been a lot of questions about 311 and why we don't have 311. Well, we had a cyber event, and following the cyber event, the implementation had to be put on hold, not by our choice. We couldn't pick it back up until after we were back up and running, which occurred technically in our new cloud environment in March of this year, and we're actively working with Tyler Technologies to get 311 back up and running. Part of that comes back to, okay, we need to get these database systems up and running, which is why this cost why this amount was budgeted specifically for the 311 systems.
So in next fiscal year, after your 311 system's built, this cost should drive down?
No, sir. It may drive down eventually, but it won't be for several years because of the different tools that have to be implemented over the course of several years to bring the systems up and running.
Okay, thank you. Currently, Mr. Manager, there's 11 positions that are vacant down there that are funded through ARPA. The Deputy Chief, the MIS Director Apps, the SR Network Systems, the Office Manager, the Application Specialist, 2 of those, 2 desktop supports, a technology trainer, a junior desktop support for roughly $989,000 without benefits. So when we fund something through ARPA, as we are here, does that benefit portion go over to our healthcare costs? Is that in our healthcare in this budget, or is that not contained within? That's kind of the driver. So when we look at our healthcare driver that we see going way up right now, are our benefits within there for these positions, or is this something that's off to the side and you'll pay it as you go?
CFO?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So for any position that's budgeted from ARPA, we would charge the overhead directly to the ARPA fund. So it wouldn't be included in the general fund budget for health insurance, if I'm understanding your question.
So the increase we see in the healthcare has nothing to do with the ARPA funded position?
Correct. That's correct. Those are general fund increases.
What does it cost us in the city for benefits, say, altogether? I know at one time you said $40,000. Is that still the $30,000 or $40,000?
It depends, and there's on average between family plan, individual plan, I think it's maybe 15 or 20 grand. On the city side, which is the 75%, the employee pays 25%. Every grant is different, so sometimes they allow us to include an overhead towards pension or towards other fringe benefits like life insurance, dental insurance, etc. So, sometimes in grants that allow more overhead, it could get up to that 40 grand number, but I don't know if Mr. Flynn knows what the cap would be on ARPA, but I believe it would be just the health insurance portion that we would offset.
So we would pay for the health insurance, but ARPA would pay for the other, or are we paying?
We would pay for everything through ARPA related to a 100% ARPA employee.
All right. Thank you.
Councilor Robinson?
Thank you. So we're hearing 311 is going to take several years now to be implemented. Is that a few years to be implemented?
No, no, Counselor. I apologize if that's the implication. 311 is a series of tools and services, and those tools typically interact with other tools and other systems. So over the course of time and the integration of those tools, it does take time to integrate them. It also takes time to identify really what the performance metrics are we're going to be driving at, things like that. So typically speaking, it is generally like a 3-year period of tweaking and fine-tuning to arrive at the performance metrics, how the data is cleaned and pulled in together. And that's a typical stand-up time for any 311 overall system, but it is not going to take 3 years to get the services up. I've already had several initial conversations with Tyler Technologies. We have another one scheduled on Thursday so that we can come back to the timeline to wrap up the implementation that was disrupted during the cyber event.
Thank you. And so, yeah, I understand it. I mean, again, that's going to be kind of a tool that's going to expand into the future based on what the administration's needs, wants, desires are with that on the build-out. But again, I understand we had the cyber event. We've had 311 specific positions fully funded already for a year. Now, have those positions even gone out for application process to see, hey, we're going to be hiring these to begin the onboarding process of this? Or is this something we're just going to continue to fund until we get to a point where the first step, at least we can stand this up and start the work? I mean, I know there's been a lot of conversations between MIS for the city of Lowell with the vendor, but we've been funding positions to kind of give you the support and staff to stand up a product that the council has been asking for 3 years. And so are we going to see some kind of action if we fund these positions the next fiscal year? Or is this something that is just going to be us chasing our tail for another year and we could have cut these positions?
All excellent points, Counselor. The best way to really address this is everything was moving along fine up until when the cyber event occurred last year. We had positions, we had job descriptions built out, everything was built out and sitting there, and we were wrapping up the implementation and getting ready to get the positions posted. The cyber event occurred. When the cyber event occurred, for lack of a better term, we had a sandbox in which everything was built because it couldn't be built in the live system. When the cyber event occurred, in order to continue operations in the cloud, meet payroll, meet all the other things, the business continuity for the city, the sandbox could not be made available in the cloud. That was just part of the insurance that we had with them to keep things running. That ran up until March of this year when it was transitioned back into a different area in the cloud. And we've spent the past couple of months working with the vendor, tweaking, fine-tuning, getting things reconnected, including the 311 system, which I want to say within the past 3 weeks, they've conducted significant activity and work remotely to bring things back to where they were prior to the cyber event. We have a meeting scheduled on Thursday so that we can identify the timeline to complete the implementation. We have the job descriptions in HR waiting to go. It didn't make sense at the time to post the positions knowing that there was no system or services for them to interact with. The system goes beyond just answering the phone. That's not, 311 is many different elements. Certainly answering the phone and servicing constituents and directing their requests and following up, et cetera, is one component and one element. But the performance-driven data that is really the heart of the system, all that stuff is part of what we're trying to get stood up now, and we are hoping to get the positions posted once the budget is wrapped up so that we can bring the appropriate people in to be part of the final implementation of the system to get it up and running and servicing the constituents, sir.
Thank you. So basically, the answer to my question is, if we fund these positions again this fiscal year, we will see these jobs get posted, filled, and they will help to transition into a stand-up of this 311 at some point in FY25.
Absolutely, sir, yes.
Thank you.
Councilor Getcha?
One more question. If the manager's proposing to cut 6 positions out of your budget, as he had stated, or 5, what percentage of these expenses now will no longer be needed? Because if you have 6 or 5 employees, but on the end of resource, meaning now you're not going to be able to use the same resources. So that's my question, like, is there a percentage now that you won't be able to get to out of your ordinary expenses?
No, Counselor, there isn't. There's no direct correlation between the personnel and the activities or the things that we fund, the licenses that we have to provide to the city. Quite frankly, this is a complete reorganization of technology within the organization. It's something that is essential. It's something that's critical, not just for the city overall, but for public safety. And to be perfectly honest, this isn't a matter of doing more with less. I personally worked 113 calendar days following the cyber event without a day off. Many of my team did. We worked more with less. We do that all the time. But quite frankly, it's reaching a grind, and we can't do more with less. That was the idea behind reorganizing technology throughout the organization to ensure that everybody was on the same page. We were delivering technology and services and support consistently throughout the organization under the same umbrella of governance to make sure that we are doing things forward-thinking for the future, building for the future all together.
Thank you.
Councilor Dakota.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Fernandez, a cybersecurity specialist and a cybersecurity administrator. Are there any overlapping responsibilities there and why we need both of those positions?
The overlap is minimal in terms of just having a knowledge of cybersecurity, but cybersecurity is a very huge endeavor. We have a very extensive, large network, and with all due respect to anyone that you may have asked, I mean, different municipalities have different infrastructure and different configurations and different technologies in place. Here in the city, we have a significant amount of technology in place. And the cybersecurity specialist ensuring the overall cybersecurity of the organization on the network infrastructure, which is wired, wireless, CGIS stuff with police, et cetera, is a very different role over the cybersecurity administrator, who is also making sure that everything from a password protection level is set up, ensuring that the training programs we have in place for cybersecurity, which we participate in through grants through the Commonwealth, are functional and making sure that everyone is participating in them. They really are separate job descriptions, separate roles that are intended to work cohesively, no different than a senior network specialist and a network specialist would.
Thank you.
All those in favor say aye. Opposed, motion passes. Mr. Fernandez, thank you. Moving on to law. We need a motion to approve the appropriation for law by Councilor Scott, seconded by Councilor Yem. Councilor Janess.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Looking through this, I noticed that there is a significant line item for professional services. But at the same time, your department is now fully staffed, if I understand that correctly. So I'm just curious what the use case is for those professional services dollars.
Solicitor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, so that increase is a part of the process for workers' comp, where instead of doing that internally, we're going to go out to a third-party administrator, and that's going to pay for that contract.
That was my guess, so I'm glad to hear that's the answer. Thank you.
Councilor Getchia.
Thank you through you to the solicitor. Currently in FY24, a transfer of $25,000 was added to salaries and wages temporary, and only 59% has been used, or $10,000. Why do we need $84,000 in addition to that?
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. Yes, so that is going to be for a new position in our department for a collective bargaining assistant. That was a position that ultimately was decided belonged in the law department.
Councilor Robertson.
So then why didn't we list that under positions, and shouldn't we have put that as a part-time position?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So it's a temporary position. So it's sort of, standalone in its own category.
$84,000 temporary seems like a lot of money. That's how long is temporary?
I don't have an answer to that. It could vary. At this point, I couldn't tell you an exact amount of time, months, weeks, I'm not sure.
Okay, I would make a motion to cut $84,000 out of
Second.
the bottom line of law department.
Second.
Councilor Scott.
Could I just ask, could we get a little bit more clarification on what the role is going to be that this person's, expected to be coming on board for?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the intent was, as we went into negotiations with all of the unions, that it would be helpful to have someone in this position to get us through, to try and get us through as efficiently as we can, which is sort of why there's a temporary nature to it. And I don't know, we don't know when all the contracts are going to resolve. We don't know what other ongoing labor relations issues can come up. So it is helpful to have another person on board to help with that.
Would there be a bid process with that? Like, I don't know how that would work. I mean, how did we come up with, I guess, $84,000 for that role? Is there someone in mind for this? Like, I'm just trying to figure that out. Thank you.
Yeah, so there's someone currently in the role right now that is working with the department, and moving forward into FY25, there could still be a need for that. It may not go much longer into FY25. We don't know, but.
Councilor Robinson?
Thank you. If the law department's fully staffed, this is like the first in 20 years I've ever heard of a negotiation specialist at $85K for a part-time position. I mean, under our plan of government, the manager has full discretion during negotiations to assign a team, and who he picks and chooses. I mean, we're pretty well staffed up. I mean, we've been getting competitive with salaries and wages for a lot of our staff members, and now we need to bring on an additional negotiation specialist part-time. I don't even understand where that request came from. Like, we have plenty of staff available to negotiate that are working the day in and day out. So to bring somebody in that's doing it temporarily, I mean, we're going to pay $85,000 for somebody that's only temporary to carry ideas and thoughts of permanent administration into the other room to convey those ideas and thoughts. I can't support that. I would support that motion to cut. Thank you.
Manager, good.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Councilor, to the point, yes, we are fully staffed, but not everyone knows the full history of what's been going on with the CBAs, the historical CBAs. And I don't want to go too far with this and having discussions with CBAs, but knowing what happened 10 years ago on a transfer or a give is something that is extremely valuable to this administration. And that's where we're at. And to continue the labor harmony, or to start anew with labor harmony. Most of the attorneys today that we currently have, they don't have any historical reference as to what had happened contracts ago. And that's really the reason that I think that this is important.
Mr. Mayor, through you to the city manager, a lot of the contracts have footnotes that basically spell out how we arrived at what we're at with any changes over the years. That's what a consolidated contract does. Once it's ratified over the years, there's asterisks all throughout most contracts. I mean, that was always incorporated in the final edition.
Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through to the council. Council, we've found that many of the contracts were not grouped together appropriately as well. So this isn't exactly, I would tend to agree with you. You want a contract here it is. That's not necessarily the case. With the side letters of agreement and other pieces, that is not the case that I'm finding right now.
Councilor Janess?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the city manager, or maybe the CFO, I'm not sure who's more appropriate. It was mentioned that this position we're speaking about, the $84,000, there's somebody already in it. Where did this budget line item exist previously, and did it just get moved to legal, or is this a new line item that's being created?
CFO?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilor, in FY 2024, when the need arose and when the position was initially funded, it was, I believe, in the finance or city manager? The city manager's office was funding it. We believed it to be more appropriately funded in the law department. And so the funding was requested to be appropriated into the law department in the FY 2025 budget. But the history, if you were to look back at the Munis reports, would be in the manager's office.
Thank you. Could you tell, I'm scrolling to find it, but your brain probably works faster on this than my fingers do. What was it budgeted at last year?
I believe this was funded through a transfer, but if you'll give me just a minute, I'll take a look. So the amount, Mr. Mayor, $25,000 was the amount funded in the current year.
And when was that transfer done, do you know?
There was a original budget that was appropriated for $10,000, and then there was a transfer from the salary and wages permanent of $5,000 that happened in August of 2023, FY24. But that's not 25,000. I apologize. It was in the law department. So the $25,000 was transferred in from the salary and wages permanent in the law department within FY 2024. Excuse me. It was not the city manager's office.
Okay, so this is something that's always been in the law department, or at least it was created in the law department this fiscal year, FY 24.
My recollection is it was created as we began negotiations with the unions for successor contracts within this current fiscal year.
Okay. Thank you.
How's it get you?
Last year in FY 24, 23, there was no line item for salaries and wages temporary. So did you create a line by transferring out of permanent, just create a line for temporary? Is that how you did it?
Counselor, FY 2024 is when it was funded, not 23.
Okay, so that was at $9,000. It says it was funded at $9,404.
No,
And
in the
then
law department.
transferred in
Counselor.
was $9,000. Whoops. Okay. No. All right, I'll get back to you in a minute.
Councilor Dakota?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Once again, through you to the city solicitor, on professional services, 175, now looking for 275. Can you explain that increase, please?
Mr. Mayor, yes, I think Councilor Janessa actually asked that. So that extra 100,000 is for workers' comp. We're moving that from an internal function to a third-party administrator.
To a third party?
To a third-party administrator, yes.
Councilor Getcha?
I'm sorry, now I found it. Through you to CFO Baldwin. So last year, salaries and wages temporary was funded at $0, and then $25,000 got transferred in there, but there was no transfer out of salaries and wages permanent. There was actually a transfer in there of $110,000, which is this current year, right?
Yes. Yes, I apologize. It was an appropriation from free cash. I see the DTL now that I'm looking into Munis. In February of 24, the council appropriated $25,000 into the temporary salary and wages in the law department. Okay. February 28th, 2024.
So that's what so we did a transfer during the year, $25,000 out of free cash over, or your cash, yep, out of the manager's office.
An appropriation.
Thank you.
So does the motion stand still? Roll call? To knock out $84,000 for the law department budget.
Counsel Dakota.
Yes.
Counsel Getchia.
Yes.
Counsel Janess.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
No.
Counsel Mercia.
No.
Counsel Noon.
Yes.
Counsel Robinson.
Yes.
Mayor Rourke.
No.
Counsel Scott.
No.
Counsel Yem.
No.
Counsel Chow.
No.
Motion fails.
Moving on to elections. Motion to approve the appropriation for elections by Councilor Mercia, seconded by Councilor Yem. Any questions? All those in favor say aye. Opposed, motion passes. Good to go. Planning and Development appropriation, motion to accept by Councilor Leahy, seconded by Councilor. Planning and Development, seconded by Councilor Chow. Any questions? Councilor Getcha?
Through you to the manager. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the manager. Under professional services, we transferred out $16,500 and have only spent $105 out of the original $30,000 with $6,895 encumbered. Why is that?
Who wants it? Anyone? Spires, oh, CFO, go ahead.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. Counselor, if you wouldn't mind terribly, if you could read me the account number, it'd be a little bit easier to be on the same page. I can see that you have the Munis report over there.
You're going to
so
make me look for the count number. I'll find it. Give me 1 second. I'll find it for
I'm
you.
sorry. Or maybe the budget, revised budget amount.
I should be following along myself, but I wrote it in notes.
Yeah.
So professional service line item is 530000. And they're 182.
Thank you, Counselor. Just give me one. So if I may clarify, so there was an original budget of in 24 of 30,000 with a transfer in of 13. Is that the account you're referring to?
When you had an original budget of 30,000, but you transferred out 16,500. So there's a leftover amount of the 13,500.
So, right, and that I'm seeing a little bit of more detail. That's a net. So there was a transfer in of 13,000 and a transfer out of 29,500. The net being, I believe, the amount you listed there.
I guess why didn't we cut that down if we're not using those funds and we're transferring out of there in large amounts and there's still large amounts left over? That's what the question really is.
If I can, Mayor. Can I speak? Great. So our professional service line item, we had a few, I believe, we've had professional services related to things like additional consulting services that we've needed to take on over time. The sealer of weights and measures account was larger than we had anticipated last year. And so we had to pull funds to cover that increase. We do anticipate DPD is officially fully staffed up at this point based on additional positions we were able to get in the last year's budget. And so we do have a number of new types of projects that we'll be taking on, things like additional consulting work additional things like trying to do more tax title properties. So we're going to be doing a lot more with our asset manager. Our transportation folks are bringing on more consultants to do some of the traffic calming programs. So I do anticipate that we're going to tap into that next year. And we also are going to continue our inspectional services camera program, which was also funded in the last budget. And so we'll also need funding to, if anything comes up with the cameras, if we need to like move them, identify additional locations, things like that. So we've tried to anticipate some of those expenses and put it in this line item.
So my hard part is that when you look at your overall budget, you're only at 64% right now, as of the end of April, when we could get these things. And the question is that these accounts are not being used. They may be transferred in between, but there's still a significant amount of money that's left over at the end of this. And that's where we're looking at, like, repair and maintenance of equipment. What is that? Because you had a $500 budget and you took $295 out of it, so you have $205 in there. So you had a total of $500 and you only really have $205 for this year in that budget. But next year you're requesting $10,000. So I'm like, how do we go from only needing $205 this year to a $10,000 jump? And that's really what the question.
Yeah, I mean, that's a perfect line item in that we didn't have cameras to maintain last year, and we're going to moving forward. And so that's something. We also have a new vehicle in the department. The building commissioner got a vehicle, which is an expense that we haven't had previously, so it's not something we've ever had to carry in the budget.
Okay, thank you.
All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Passes. Moving on, police, the motion to appropriate the budget for the police by Councilor Noon, seconded by Councilor Leahy. Comments, questions? Police?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So that account is 210. So when I asked the question, why is there such a large increase in temporary money? So I saw the manager had already made the cut of those already, or reduction of that temporary funds. Was that on that piece of paper that we got, Mr. Manager? I think so, right?
Yes. Yes.
So what was that cut from to? I don't have it in front of me.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to the council. Council, that is the interns, Middlesex Community College interns. It was slated at $90,000, which was taken out of the salary and wages temporary.
I'm just trying to keep up with you. So we had $96,000. It went up $46,000. How much did we cut from that altogether?
We cut 90,000, Councilor, from that.
You cut 90,000 from
That's
that?
correct.
Okay.
And the 6 positions, the 6 jobs.
Under this special events line item in police, only 19.4% is used in FY24, even though we went through 83%. Do you know why we haven't used any of those funds? I'm sorry. So under your special events portion of your budget, Chief, welcome to the council meeting. Under the line item, you have special events in here, budgeted for $59,000, and only roughly $11,000 out of the $59,000 was used. Do we know why?
It's what we're billing to different events and things that are happening in the city. Some things may have been billed previously to a different account, and now it's being billed to special events. I believe in the last week or so, it's been drawn down.
So you're shifting the overtime money to special events because it was used during special events?
Correct.
Yeah, okay, thank you. The other question is the physical fitness incentive. We use 0 currently, so.
It hasn't been paid yet.
It hasn't been paid? Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions? All those in favor, say aye. Opposed? Passes. Thank you, Superintendent. We're on fire. We need a motion to approve the appropriation for fire by Councilor Leahy, seconded by Councilor Noon. Chief, hello. Any questions? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Chief, thank you very much. Good job.
Thank you.
Lowell Public Schools, I need an appropriation for Lowell Public Schools, completed the budget a couple weeks ago. And a motion to approve by Councilor Getchia, second by Councilor Janess. Is that a roll call or just approve it? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Passes. Greater Lowell Technical School. Can you take that and Essex together, Mr. Manager, or is that separate?
I'd like to recuse myself from this.
Yeah. So we'll take Greater Lowell Technical and the Essex Agricultural High School. A motion to approve the appropriation by Councilor Robinson, second by Councilor Scott. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Moving on, DPW, a motion to approve the appropriation by Councilor Chow, second by Councilor Leahy. Questions, comments? Councilor Robinson.
Thank you. Again, I've briefly had a conversation about creating, I understand the continuity, creating the number 2 position in the Public Works under the Commissioner. I get it. I think our Commissioner does a great job. I think he works tirelessly above and beyond. I still don't agree with the creation of this position at this current time. I think I've seen historically where, as I've mentioned, the Assistant City Manager of Operations has stepped up and filled that blank on vacation weeks or whatever need be. So I think I'd like to make a motion to cut the funding of that position if possible. It is, 1 second, please. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the CFO, do you have the proposed dollar amount for that number 2 commissioner?
It's 111,436.
There it is, 111,436. Bingo.
111,436.
That, yes, that is the amount proposed in the budget. My apologies, that was for the administration and finance. It's 131,577.
131,577. Yeah, I would make the motion to cut 131,577 from the proposal.
Second by Councilor Getchia. Councilor Mercia.
I have a question on the DPW budget. I have to recuse myself, I think. Do I? I should, right? Okay. Doesn't mean I don't support it. I just can't vote on it.
Councilor Getchia.
Through you to Manager Golden. Under the DPW general, the trash collection, we appropriated last year, or this current.
It's a different point to Councilor Robinson's motion that you seconded. Do you want to just talk about that first?
Oh.
Take a vote, then move on to your.
Well, that's a bottom line cut, right? To the, so if you want to cut more, yeah, okay, yeah.
Another motion comes out of what you're asking, you know what I'm saying? So we'll get to you in a second. Any comments on the motion, Councilor Janess?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you and the manager to Commissioner St. Cyr, I was just wondering if you might be able to give a quick synopsis on this position to all of us, just so we know what we're talking about here.
Thank you, Councilor. I think in light of the work that's been coming out of the DPW and the capital work that we've taken on, projects within schools and so on, the bandwidth part is where it gets ugly. So I think being able to have this kind of position to support me in that role, I can speak to tomorrow. I have 17 invites for meetings for one day. So that's really the place that it comes through. Certainly then there's, the addition of sustainability coming on and the possibility of recreation moving over as well, so.
Thank you.
Mr. Manager?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, through to the council. Council, I think this particular position is extremely important for continuity for our future. When I had first gotten here, we lacked any type of continuity at all, whether it be at DPW or over in the assessor's office and a handful of other locations. But the ability for that person to be in the office but also on the street at the same time. So I think that this deputy is vitally important to the organization, given the scope of the span of control. So I would hope that it would be adopted. Thank you.
Councilor Noon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to, through you to Commissioner Sincere, express how appreciative we are of him and the excellent work and him and his department have done. I recognize also that this position certainly of aid to him, both can be out in the field and doing the work, as well as, create a pipeline for, in the event, I'm not saying that Commissioner Sincere go anywhere, but in the events that he move on to something bigger and better, then we have somebody in place to take on and understanding the in and out of the department. So I support the position as requested tonight.
I'll just, on the first, I would just like to add that, the Deputy Commissioner and DPW Department is just as important in the city as police, fire, the manager's offices. That being said, police superintendent has deputies, the fire chief has a deputy. We ask more of our DPW, I think, than any other department in the city. I think we should be doing all we can to help assist the department. I appreciate the respect to try to make some cost savings, but I would be supporting the position to be made. Councilor Getchia, then Dakota.
Just to be clear, is we can't cut a position. All we can do is cut the funding. So if the manager still wants this position and has somewhere where he could pull $131,000 from, he certainly can, whether it's ARPA or whatever he wants to do with it. So I think that's really, and it doesn't sound like the manager wants to actually cut this position, so I'm sure he's going to find the funds somewhere. So that would be the question.
Councilor Dakota?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not going to support this motion because I think actually Councilor Robertson stated himself that the DPW director has gone above his responsibilities at this point and has gone way above and beyond. So I believe that this position is needed. However, I do have a question that if we did have this position, what does that do with the part-time position that we have in place here? Is that person doing what the new job will be doing presently, or are we looking at something else, Mr. St. Cyr?
Well, certainly there would be some overlap, but we're just about to undertake, there are 11 projects that are starting this summer, for instance, for the MSBA. I think they would lend themselves really well as far as being able to add, as the manager said, to the continuity side for succession planning and things like that. And even just the breadth of the department with the amount of work, the volume actually going through, I think that's where they would really be stepping up.
So I guess my question is, and I agree with that, is that, but I would imagine that part-time position would be kind of closing out within another year or two after these projects get going?
Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through to the council. Council, in DPD, we did take back a construction project manager that we did not fund. So the anticipation would be DPD and DPW work hand in glove all the time. So that part-time position would be somebody for the time being over the next couple of years, I would assume, with ARPA still in line, to put some of those projects together. That's the intention. When we looked at the DPD construction, see which jobs, and that's what we were kind of thinking.
Thank you.
Councilor Robertson?
Thank you. Again, my concerns and my questions about this position are, if you look at the structure of the organization, we have a lot of supervisory positions. If we ever did work, as been discussed by the council, in, say, centralized facilities department, that brings in additional supervision from the school side to oversee some of these projects that we're discussing. As you just mentioned, planning and development works hand in hand with public works. Also, we've been talking about a potential consolidation between a couple divisions within the DPW, that in each of those divisions have supervisory positions also. So it's not like we don't have a lot of supervisory positions. I mean, we have, I think, one department that has 8 or 10 employees with 2 supervisors above them. So I think for efficiency purposes, if we were running very efficient in certain areas, I think it'd be easier to see, hey, this is needed and no problem. But doesn't it make sense to try to get these efficiencies before we continue to add? I mean, for continuity, as was mentioned, the Assistant City Manager of Operations historically has covered a lot of these gaps that we're discussing here. And so until we get this efficiency set up, we're adding another $130,000 position, I guess, and hopefully it'll all work out if we do decide to merge. But I mean, and it's nothing, again, I echo what I said first. Commissioner St. Cyr has been working tirelessly. I completely get it. I know he's trying to really dial in, and I just would like to see some efficiencies enacted before we start adding. Thank you.
Councilor Getchia.
Thank you, Mayor Rourke. We've been pushing for a facilities department for some time, and I think it's time that we get into a further discussion of a facilities department, because I think this is further reason why we should have one in front of us. And through you to Manager Golden, have we had that looked at from an outside source and tell us what our staffing levels were, with the amounts that people should be being paid, what the studies are?
Mr. Manager.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, through you to the council. Councils, we're in the process of scoring, I think it was 3 companies, 3 organizations that came in for the reorganization at DPW. But at this point, we will be doing that, and hopefully within the next 3 to 4 weeks, in regards to looking at parks, looking at DPW as a whole, to make sure that this is where we're supposed to be going. But I still think it's vitally important, given the span of control, to allow this assistant. So I hope to have an answer for you in weeks to come when we do execute that particular proposal that just needs to be scored as we're sitting here.
Have we had that discussion with the school department and trying to cross over and saying we're looking at one big facilities department and trying to get people to the table to talk about putting custodians and other people under one umbrella with our maintenance staff in DPW?
I did speak with the superintendent. He needed additional time on this matter, but that's also a union issue, that the custodians are in the teachers union. So that's something that has not even been addressed at this time. But
No,
it's something that we definitely could.
I fully understand that, but when the operation starts to fall into the environment of the health of not only the workers, the students, and everything else, and then takes over what we do for a living here, it kind of has a crossover point. And if we're going to reorg the whole department into something like a facilities department, should we be adding positions now before the study, or should we just, and I do understand what Mr. St. Cyr is saying, because he gets my phone call more than probably anybody in any department. I call him, and he answers quickly and gets the job done. And I don't think it is fair that we have to call him because contractors can't do their jobs. When we have the trash issues that we're having in this city, I don't think it's fair that every one of us has to call Mr. St. Cyr and say, hey, can you get Public Services over, or whoever it is, Waste Management, whoever the company is, over there to pick up the trash. And I do think he takes on more than what any DPW director in the state probably ever takes over. So I do think that this position is warranted. I just would like to ask through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. St. Cyr, what does the structure look like in your opinion? What would a day look like to this person?
I think, Councilor, typically, depending on the time of year, certainly there's the seasonality that goes along with the DPW. But as far as even building out like strategic plan and things like that, they would be, really helpful to me in that regard. Being able to break down into the different departments as well, working with those deputies and strengthening those departments, the administrative skills and things like that, I think it would go a long way.
So what you're saying is it would free up more of your time to be able to do the stuff that you want to plan for the future of your department. I can't see why this position wouldn't be needed. I was in a DPW that was much smaller, that had a structure that at the top was a little bit heavier than what we have it currently. And I think that having that go-to person that you can trust in each part that's non-union and you can work within, I think that's the goal, and I will support it.
So there's a motion on the floor to remove the $131,577. Roll call.
Councilor Dakota.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
The motion is to cut $131,577 by Councilor Robinson, seconded by Councilor Getchia.
No.
Councilor Getchia.
No.
Councilor Janess.
No.
Councilor Leahy.
No.
Councilor Mercia. Counsel Noon? No. Counsel Robinson?
No.
Counsel Mailrock?
No.
Counsel Scott?
No.
Counsel Yem?
No.
Counsel Chow?
No.
Counsel Getcha?
Mr. Mayor, through you to Mr. St. Cyr, the trash piece is always mind-boggling to me because I just think that when you look at the accounts and how we're not even meeting the needs of the residents right now and the delays and everything else, through you to either the manager, the CFO, or Mr. St. Cyr, does the LHA pay all of their trash for their trash? Or are there accounts that they don't pay for?
CFO?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's a very good question, Councilor. The Lowell Housing Authority has an existing pilot agreement with the city of Lowell that is ancient, to be frank. It has former city manager Jim Campbell's name on it. It provides for an entirety of funding in lieu of water, sewer, trash, et cetera, for the units at the Housing Authority. They do make that payment in the approximately $400,000 a year, all inclusive. It's something that, in the past, we've had some subcommittees about. It's something that needs to be re-examined, in my opinion.
I don't know if you can answer this or the city solicitor can. Is there an evergreen clause in this contract? Because how can it only be $400,000 without being negotiated for 35 plus years? Because he hasn't been the manager since 1990, I believe.
Sure, Mrs. Solicitor.
Thank you. So the way it's written, there is no end date. So it's the clear language, so we would have to attempt to negotiate with them, to open up negotiations, to craft arguments as to why that the language that's in that contract is no longer appropriate today. But yes, that's the way the contract's written.
I hope you understand my position is that if I have to increase trash rates on residents in this city, then everybody should be paying their fair share. And it shouldn't just be them. And if the LHA is not paying their fair share and I go out and try to get someone else to pay, I don't think it's fair. So how long would it take for you guys to get back into this and negotiate this piece?
CFO?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So one of the historically what has been a sticking point is that under Chapter 121B of the general laws, housing authorities are statutorily exempt from taxes and from municipal charges, although there does appear to be some gray area as it relates to what exactly constitutes those charges. And we have started discussions, although I'm dating back to like 2017, 2018, some of those discussions with the housing authority in good faith to make for them to make concessions or to renegotiate those amounts, but I do not believe they're under any obligation to do so.
I have worked for multiple municipalities that were not funding the housing authority within their district's trash. And that's why I don't understand why we are their dumpsters and they did it their own way. It was totally separate from the municipality from within. And I don't understand how, if we put them on notice for a certain period of time, how we can't just say, here's your charge. This is what they're charging us. This is, if you want this service, here's your charge. If they can't live by that, then we should move on. And when I look at this budget and I'm looking at the trash increases, I would say, are they restricted to the same barrel system that we are? And the bulk?
Generally, yes, they are, depending on the type of units that the housing is in. So
You said generally, and that's the word I caught. So when I look at it, and they throw out bulk items, are they at the same place as a regular resident? Or do we send over people to pick up their bulk stuff and it just doesn't get charged to anybody?
So for bulk, they actually contact Waste Management directly. We don't actually pick up their bulk.
So they pay for their own bulk but can't pay for their own trash?
Correct.
Does that make any sense? We could pay for our own bulk, but we can't pay for our own trash. I guess that's new to me. When we look at this trash fee in here, and we look at the appropriation, and we see the jump that we're seeing, we saw that during the fiscal year of this current fiscal year, which it's 400, and the line item is 521504. We transferred out $378,500. Do we know what that was for?
CFO?
Sure. If you could give me 1 second, I'll trace the transfer. It's often the case, historically speaking, while I'm looking this up, that if there is any overage in trash, that it is used to close out any snow and ice deficit that exists, so we don't have to carry forward a deficit and raise that on taxes in the subsequent year. But if you give me just a moment, I'll take a look unless Mr. Sincere has that information.
I don't see any snow and ice removal transfer ins. That's the only thing.
It certainly wouldn't have happened this year yet, but in prior years, Councilor.
It's in this year, the transfer.
What page? Oh, you're not in that, you're in the...
Portion of the budget. Oh, did you?
You want to add? Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, read that one.
What are we doing?
Mr. Mayor, if I may? So I can answer some of that, Counselor. So a portion of that money was transferred out to purchase vehicle locators that are going to be inputted into all the vehicles within the DPW fleet.
So why wouldn't we have taken that out of like repair and maintenance of equipment, where there's money left over? Oh, because it's such a large amount. Okay.
That is correct, Counselor. Yep.
In this current budget, through you to the CFO, we're going up $900,000 on the trash, roughly. It's going from 8.1 million to 9 million in this budget. Why are we looking to cut? What's that? Why are we looking to increase so much when we already paid for the delta for the trash this year and last year, and we have revenues left over? So last year we had $15 million left over, but we had to put more back, obviously, to the general fund to offset the stabilization that we took. But we still had $11 million left over after paying the trash. Why do we need to increase when we're still going to have monies left over if you look at your revenues this year? We already transferred $3.5 million in there and changed our original appropriation for the revenues. Why can't we just eat that like we've been doing for the last 30 years and keep our rates where they are?
I'm not sure I'm following your question, Counselor.
So last year we had a surplus of funds.
In the trash account?
Altogether.
Okay, in the general fund as a whole.
But we did pay the trash fees out of those funds. We had to pay them somewhere. Where did we get the money to pay the delta between what was actually charged to the residents and what the actual cost is? Where did we get those funds to pay it?
This has been part of our presentation. The delta between the cost of $7 or $8 million for trash, plus the support staff, so the recycling and solid waste and recycling, office, the personnel, the difference between the whole of the cost for trash and then the revenue that we receive, $3.1 million approximately, is absorbed by the rest of the general fund. So all of the other receipts, local aid, taxes, etc., that $5 million or so is absorbed by the general fund. And so the fee, as the proposal was made, was to bring the revenue from the fee closer to the actual cost. It's a fee for service based model.
How much in certified free cash did we have after all those funds were paid?
I'm not sure what you mean by all those funds.
Well, the general fund offset the cost of the trash, right? And we still had free cash at the end of the year. So you get one piggy bank, all the money comes in, and we still had this amount of money left over. So when you have $11 million left over, why couldn't we offset this increase out of the free cash piece, like
The
we
free
did?
cash has
Or
been
the general
entirely
fund as we are-
appropriated already, so it's not available for
Or
appropriation.
the general fund, or the revenues like we have in the past?
I don't understand what you mean by past revenues. Those are not available to us
So when you
for appropriation.
okay, so when you have positions open, and how actually did we pay for the $5 million in the delta? You said from the general fund. Why can we not continue to do that?
We can. It's not a matter of can or cannot. It is a management decision to bring that fee closer to the cost so that the taxes are not subsidizing the delta between the cost and the revenue.
Well, I think if we properly did our revenues and weren't as conservative as it says in the back of the book, when you read what your language is in the back of the book, it clearly says this. It says, officials are conservative with revenues and expenditure assumptions, and they consider historical trends when developing the budget. So if we did that and we looked at our revenues, we can obviously see that our revenues are coming in higher the last few years than what we're projecting, and we could have moved that up a little and actually offset.
The amount we certainly could not move up the revenue for the trash fee.
No,
the
for
$3.1 million
the other revenues
is,
that are there. But
we're required by law, Counselor, to set revenues based on historical trends. We have to true those up to the Department of Revenue in the fall every year. And I mean, I will say with 100% certainty that they scrutinize our revenue projections with a fine-tooth comb. The Department of Revenue does every fall before we set the tax rate. And so we're conservative because it's easier to get our tax rate approved, number one. And number two, it's consistent with the state law.
no, I understand what you're saying to me, but when you're already this year, we're going to project over $10 million in revenue.
I don't understand where you're getting that figure from.
Well, you already transferred over 3.5 and changed the original appropriation. There's already 3.5 million in it that went up in an increase.
In what, Counselor?
In the revenues. I'll talk about that when we get to revenue pieces.
Okay, so is there a motion to cut anything from the rest of the TPW budget? Because there's a motion on the floor to approve. Seconded. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, motion passes.
I did have one
Commissioner-
question on that. Just the elevator, how come we didn't put any money in the elevators? It says no, there's no money in the elevator repair and maintenance.
Was it saying say elevator maintenance?
I apologize, Counselor, I didn't hear your question.
I just had one question. How come we didn't fund elevator repair and maintenance?
In this particular year, we're gearing that money towards the FS90 improvements that we had to make. That's really where the bulk of that came from. Generally, we have been covering that right through lands and buildings within the building line.
So if all the elevator inspections and everything are covered?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Mercia?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could we bundle the last 5 departments, please?
Motion by Councilor Mercia, about the last 5 departments, second by Councilor Leahy. The appropriation for all 5 is somewhere around $9-10 million, so we could do those all at once.
Why didn't I just do them all?
Health, Council on Aging, Veterans, Recreation, and Library. Comments, questions? Motion to approve by Councilor Mercia, second by Councilor Robinson. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, motion passes. That completes the department-by-department portion of the budget. Quickly, there's a lot of things that I think are already set. Debt service, workers' comp, insurance, retirement, Medicare, claims, judgments. Comments on any of those? Moving on, 3 general funds. Wastewater, parking, water.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
A question I forgot to ask CFO Baldwin. Concerning the charter school disbursement, it went up $3 million. Can you explain to the people watching why we continually, that number is rising?
CFO?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's a very good question, Counselor. And in the appropriation order, I'll just make this sort of as a point on background. The The charges, we call them cherry sheet assessments. They're not technically appropriations, so they're not included in the order. They are assessed on every community and netted out of our state aid. So much like an individual's paycheck, you get your deductions taken out and you pay the net. We get our local aid net of those assessments. But charter schools have been a major financial challenge for the city for many years. This is something we've talked about here with this council, with prior councils, and each year we've seen a year-over-year increase in the assessment. That is due in part to one particular charter school, which has grown in grades, and so the enrollment has grown, and the assessment, according to that, is grown as well. There are sort of two components to the charter schools. There's the assessment, and then there's a reimbursement that's set at the state. That is something that we hope every year that the legislature will fund in full, and hasn't always happened. And so it's, this year, according to the Senate version of the budget, we've seen an increase in the reimbursement, which is good news. But in prior years,
What percentage of a reimbursement?
It's $12 million on, I don't have the exact figure, but I think it's 42 million for charter schools. So the way that the funding formula works, when a child leaves the public schools to go to a charter school, the district is reimbursed 100% for the first year, and then it's a declining reimbursement for 75, 75, 75, 25, something of that nature. And so it's the net total of those children leaving is, if we're reimbursed 100% pursuant to the formula. However, the 100% reimbursement is completely up to the state to fund in the state budget. And so each year we've seen, the grades increase, and that has increased our assessment, which is a major fiscal challenge for the city.
It's safe to assume, though, with that charter school is now up to grade 12, that we should see a leveling off, I would imagine, in the years to come, correct?
That is right, Counselor. In years to come, we are getting, so they have almost fully expanded to the 12th grade, and so we do expect in the next 2 or 3 years for a leveling off of the charter school, which, as long as I've been doing this, has been a $4 or $5 million year-over-year increase. We can expect in some years to come that will level off, which is good news.
I appreciate the explanation. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the enterprise funds. We have wastewater, parking, water. With no questions or comments, I need a motion to approve a final number of, Mr. Ball, tell me if I'm correct, $519,919,557.
Actually, Mr. Mayor, if you count the provisions underneath on the next page, the total, including the manager's cuts, is now the manager's proposed cuts that was voted on by the council tonight, as well as a $25,000 reduction, which was also approved by the council tonight. The total number is $581,989,952. Again, that's $581,989,952.
Yeah, it's 519, 944, 557 minus the.
Yeah, which is 519,919,557.
919,557.
Yeah, we don't take the change.
The mayor was correct, Mr. Ball. Mr. Assistant CFO. Okay. Yeah, the cherry sheet, I think you add in there. All right, so, okay. Motion to approve by Councilor Mercia, second by Councilor Young. Councilor Getchia.
Just a couple things on the water enterprise. You're looking at, through you to the manager, I'm looking at this year's Munis report, and we're already almost over on the chemical piece. And then when you look at the budget, it's cut by almost $600,000. And chemicals, I know they're all up, so do we know why that would have been cut by that much?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. And Mr. Duchesne certainly knows a lot about the chemical budget, and I'll lean on him on any subject matter expertise. But the the funding strategy here was purposeful, and we have ARPA available to us to fund water and sewer improvements. And so in order to, we knew we were faced with large increases in water and sewer, and so we tried, the same is the case in the wastewater utility as well. For any one-time expenditures, chemicals are a recurring cost, so that's not a one-time expenditure, but for this year, in order to mitigate that increase on the ratepayers as much as possible, we're going to fund the balance. We still have to buy the chemicals. We still have to treat the water, but we're going to use the ARPA fund to pay for them this year. We'll be able to incorporate that expense in next year's budget with the rate increases proposed.
So when you go back down, now it just changed line items. When you look at your indirect cost transfers out of the general, it went up by $500,000. Is that the reason why? It doesn't have an account on it.
The indirect charges are calculations performed by the finance office for the essentially what I suppose you could call overhead of the utility. So, because they are separate enterprise funds, we calculate the amount of, so all of the city departments that support water, sewer, parking, the treasurer's office, running checks, the auditor's office, running payroll, the city manager's office, my office, et cetera. We support those, and the personnel in those general fund departments are paid by the general fund. And so the enterprise funds reimburse the general fund for a calculation based on their revenue as a percentage of the total revenue collected by the city. And then we apply that to those expenditures which are shared by city departments in support of the enterprise funds. And those are the indirect costs. Essentially, it's an expense to the enterprise fund and it's a revenue to the general fund.
When you look at wastewater, they only went up $150,000, which is minimal, and this one went up $500,000. So that was what the question is. Don't they use basically the same services?
Not exactly, and I don't have the calculations in front of me, but it's based on a standard set of calculations based on a number of departments that support it. We also, we don't take 100% of what that calculation produces because it would unduly burden the enterprise fund. And so for something like water and sewer, typically we'll take 75%, I think is what we went with this year. So we arrive at a number based on our calculation, and if it would unduly burden the enterprise, we scale back a little bit. So these are scaled back numbers, but those services are not exactly the same in each department.
And the last line item is the emergency repair. We funded $0 when we know that we are going to need emergency repairs. So how did we come to that conclusion that there were going to be none?
Again, Councilor, that's something that we can use ARPA for water. And so again, with a strategy to mitigate the impact on the rate increase, yes, there are going to be emergencies. We certainly don't know how many or when they will occur, but when they do, we will use ARPA in this year, although it is noteworthy that that is not something that's going to be available to us forever. Or for much longer, for that matter.
And one question through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Executive Director of Water. PFAS, how is that going to hit your budget? Or is it at all?
Well, right now, we are under the MCL. The EPA is, right now, the MCL is 70 parts per trillion. Mass DEP is more stringent. We're at 20 parts per trillion, but we have not gone above that MCL as of yet. We had one quarter that would go over the 4 parts per trillion that the EPA is proposing in the future. But at this moment, we have no issues at all with PFAS.
That future number, is that concerning to you? Because it's going down to 4.
Actually, it is not, Counselor. We use granular activated carbon, and what we do right now is we replace one filter every year. And if it was to become an issue, we'd probably have to replace 2 filters a year. So that would remedy any PFAS increases.
I think this is a good conversation for the residents at home because PFAS is like the thing that's going throughout the country right now, and people are very concerned where the federal government released a lot of money to offset this, but our water treatment plant actually takes care of it. So I was just trying to highlight what future expenses may be, but it sounds like you guys have it under control. Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion by Councilor Yam, second by Councilor Mercia to accept the appropriation order. Roll call.
Councilor Dakota.
Yes.
Counsel Getchia.
Yes.
Counsel Janess.
No.
Counsel Janess.
No.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Counsel Noon.
Yes.
Counsel Robinson.
Yes.
Mayor Rourke.
Yes.
Counsel Scott.
Yes.
Counsel Yem.
Yes.
Counsel Chow.
Yes.
10 yeas.
3.2, our next public hearing. Your vote? Vote to accept provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 59, Section 5, Clause 54, property tax exemption. All those in favor? Aye. All in favor? Portion of the meeting is closed. All those, opposition? Opposition? Portion of the meeting is closed. The motion to adopt by Councilor Mercia, second by Councilor Janess. Roll call.
Counsel Dakota.
Yes.
Counsel Getchia.
Yes.
Counsel Janess.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Counsel Noon.
Yes.
Was it
Yes.
Counsel Robinson?
Yes.
Mayor Rourke.
Yes.
Counsel Scott.
Yes.
Counsel Yem.
Yes.
Counsel Chow.
Yes.
11 yeas.
3.3, loan order 2025 capital plan loan order. Start the meeting with those speak in favor.
Motion to approve.
In favor? Favor? Portion of the meeting is closed. Those in opposition? 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 That section of the meeting is closed. Motion to approve by Councilor Noon, second by Councilor Robinson.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just make a comment.
Councilor Robinson.
I'm glad to see that under this appropriation, we're continuing to put money into accounts to look at interest in land and certain sidewalk and vaults. I think that's important. I think that's going to be a Herculean task, and I know it's going to take quite some time, but I'm glad to see that that commitment still exists, and we'll get there slowly but surely. Thank you.
I would agree with Councilor Robinson, Mr. Manager. I think this is, one of the best, most robust capital plans in my time as a city council. There's a lot of good stuff in here, and that will benefit the city for years and years to come. So, that being said, roll call.
Counsel Dakota.
Yes.
Counsel Getchia.
Yes.
Counsel Janess.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia. Counsel Noon.
Yes.
Counsel Robinson.
Yes.
Mayor Rourke.
Yes.
Counsel Scott.
Yes.
Counsel Yem.
Yes.
Counsel Chow.
Yes.
11 yeas.
Public hearing, 3.4, loan order, rescind wastewater loan order. Open the public hearing. Those in favor? In favor? In favor? Portion of the meeting is closed. Those in opposition? 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 That portion of the meeting is closed. The motion to adopt by Councilor Mercia, second by Councilor Yem. Questions, comments? Roll call.
Counsel Dakota.
Yes.
Counsel Getchia.
Yes.
Counsel Janess.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Counsel Noon.
Yes.
Counsel Robinson.
Yes.
Mayor Rourke.
Yes.
Counsel Scott.
Yes.
Counsel Yem.
Yes.
Counsel Chow.
Yes.
11 yeas.
3.5, loan order, wastewater EPA compliance capital improvements. Start the public hearing. Those that speak in favor? In favor? In favor? The portion of the meeting is closed. Those wishing to speak in opposition? Opposition? Opposition, that portion of the meeting is closed. Need a motion to adopt by Councilor Robinson, seconded by Councilor Yem. Roll call.
Counsel Dakota.
Yes.
Counsel Getchia.
Yes.
Counsel Janess.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Counsel Noon.
Yes.
Counsel Robinson.
Yes.
Mayor Rourke.
Yes.
Counsel Scott.
Yes.
Counsel Yem.
Yes.
Counsel Chow.
Yes.
11 yeas.
3.6, ordinance, amend Chapter 20, Article 3, DPW. Open the meeting. Those wishing to speak in favor? In favor? In favor. Close that portion of the meeting. Those wishing to speak in opposition? Opposition? Opposition. That portion of the meeting is closed. Need a motion to adopt by Councilor Chow, second by Councilor Dakota. Roll call.
Counsel Dakota.
Yes.
Counsel Getchia.
Yes.
Counsel Janess.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Present.
Counsel Noon.
Yes.
Counsel Robinson.
Yes.
Mayor Rourke.
Yes.
Counsel Scott.
Yes.
Counsel Yem.
Yes.
Counsel Chow.
Yes.
10 yeas.
3.7, ordinance, amend Chapter 20, Article 7, Department of Management, Information Systems. I'll open the meeting to all those in favor. In favor? In favor? Portion of the meeting is closed. All in opposition? 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 That portion of the meeting is now closed. The motion to adopt by Councilor Robinson, second by Councilor Janess. Roll call.
Counsel Dakota.
Yes.
Counsel Getchia.
No.
Counsel Janess.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Counsel Noon.
Yes.
Counsel Robinson.
Yes.
Mayor Rourke.
Yes.
Counsel Scott.
Yes.
Counsel Yem.
Yes.
Counsel Chow.
Yes.
And yes.
3.8, ordinance, amend Chapter 20, Article 11, Office of Cultural Affairs and Special Events. Start the meeting off with those who speak in favor. In favor? In favor, that portion of the meeting is now closed. Those who wish to speak in opposition? Opposition? Opposition, that portion of the meeting is now closed. The motion to adopt by Councilor Robinson, second by Councilor Scott.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Councilor Robinson.
I think this is another example in the budget that I applaud the administration. You heard loud and clear when you came in. I think this is something every one of us has echoed in the previous council as well, to really try to roll out and do more to market our city, provide more efficient and effective communications. The special events is starting to really take off. I think we have a great team that's been orchestrating that right through, and I think this is going to just bolster all the efforts that they started, so thank you for that.
Roll call.
Counsel Dakota.
Yes.
Counsel Getchia.
Yes.
Counsel Janess.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Counsel Noon.
Yes.
Counsel Robinson.
Yes.
Mayor Rourke.
Yes.
Counsel Scott.
Yes.
Counsel Yem.
Yes.
Counsel Chow.
Yes.
11 yeas.
3.9, ordinance, amend fee schedule for waste. Start the public hearing with all those who wish to speak in favor. In favor? In favor? The portion of the meeting is closed. Those who wish to speak in opposition? Opposition?
My name is Ryan Freer. I reside on Campbell Drive. One question I have about this, it'll be brief. I know it's changed to 225 going forward instead of the 325. One thing I think this fails to consider is a significant amount of the elderly people in our city who may put their houses into estates, who are now going to go from 125 to 425. A lot of people do that for estate planning, and if it's owned by the estate, then they're non-owner occupied, and therefore they're going to have a huge increase. So I just wanted to have that considered. Thank you.
You have to. No.
I'd like some clarification.
I have a question. I have a question because someone called me on this, and they said this, and I'm glad that Moran is here from MIS, because they said to me, which they know better than me, I guess, on Chapter 150 regarding the fees, in regards to 3.9, it has res, which is residential, refuge residential, that's what that means. Eld, which is refuge for the elderly, single family, HH, household. And it goes on to say elderly 1, it's a duplex with 1 elderly, and then it goes on to refuge elderly 2, duplex with 2 elderly, and then it says additional set, it says ADT, original set. They're telling me that if this is not put into the Munis system, the billing codes are not up to par and not exactly the way that it's going to read, that could mess it up in the system. I don't know personally, but that's what they told me. So I just thought I'd let you know that. And that the new fees should match these 5 categories. Do you understand that, Maran? You're not going to come to... I can give you a call tomorrow.
Good, Mr. Manager, good.
But that's what someone told me. I don't know the first thing about it.
Thank you.
I don't know anything about it. I'm just relaying a message.
CFO?
Thank you. And I know a little bit. Mr. Fernandez knows a lot of it. So essentially, the Munis system will be programmed, will be programmed to carry out the intent of the ordinance.
Okay.
And so the ordinance language that is before the council is, in essence, identical with different numbers than it was before. And then we use Munis to effectuate that intent of the ordinance. And so I understand what the resident or
Your
person
resident, it's a resident.
mentioned, and we'll take that under advisement and make sure that Munis handles it accordingly. But I don't necessarily see that as an issue. And I see Mr. Fernandez shaking his. I understand what they mean, but we will set Munis so that it carries out the intent of the ordinance.
That's fine. And then under Chapter 270, under the fees and things like that, there's a description of different categories, but there is not a description on non-residential. In other words, the landlord owns the property, but he's not the resident there. So it's a non-resident, and so there's no description on that person, on that particular entity. There is on the others, but not that one, under 270. I'm only giving you, I'm the messenger here.
Right. So, Mr. Mayor, if I may address that, that's, if there's no definition in the ordinance, we would use the administrative process we have in place already, which the closest process we have to that is in the rental unit inspection. So we do have a verification process for who is owner occupied. And we would utilize something similar in order to sort out the certificate of inspection, who is owner occupied and is not. And we would set up administratively a certification process where applications would have to be sent out. People would have to prove to the city that they are owner occupied. And I don't feel like this is too far out on a limb, but if we bill somebody at $425 and they're in an owner occupied unit, they're going to let us know. I feel pretty confident about that, and then we can sort through that administratively. I don't know that there needs to be any legal change to the ordinance to do so.
I'm not saying there's a change, there's an addition. In other words, they're describing every class, but that one, there's no definition of what that means. They're not, it's not there. I don't know, I'm only telling you what they told me. Maybe I'm not explaining it right, but that's what they're telling me. I have to take their word for it, I'm just giving it to you. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Councilor Noon, Councilor Gidget, Councilor Scott, Councilor Janess. Councilor Noon.
I'm all set.
Oh, I thought I saw your hand go up. Oh, nice and easy. Councilor Gidget.
Thank you, Mayor Rourke. The one thing that really bothers me about this trash increase is that we're increasing it on some of the people who are the lowest income people in the city. When we go to 425 instead of the 125, these are renters, and I don't care what anybody thinks in this room, it's going to be a passed on cost. And they're trying to buy homes. And we're looking at affordable housing right through, and we can't even keep them at the same rate as a regular resident who's owned a house. I just don't think it's fair. I think that, everybody should be treated equally at the 125, and so I won't support this because of that. I just think that if we're really serious about affordable housing, this is just passing on the cost to people who are trying to save fundings. Thank you.
Mr. Manager.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the council. Councilor, we talked about this, and the 4 units that are currently utilized as what we would normally pick up, and let me clarify this, there are 5 units and 6 units that if they have owner-occupieds there is a system where we can still charge them the rate. But landlords today in the city of Lowell are getting maximum rate, the maximum rental from people. And we've looked at this, I've looked at this very closely. I don't think that this is going to be that much of an issue, considering the amount of monies that some landlords are profiting. And the investors, the investment landlords, over 4 units, which is 5 and above, with an exception, most of them 5 and 6 units, they're on commercial pickup anyhow. So we're talking about folks who Your two families are typically owner-occupied, not always, of course, we know that, and the three units and the 4 units. But to answer the gentleman's question previously, in regards to elderly as well, if that were happening, that would be an unintended consequence. I think we could solve that problem. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. If it were put into a life estate or something like that and they were still living there. I think that's an unintended consequence, but that we could deal with. But the landlords are getting the absolute maximum amount of money, and I think for far too long the absentee landlords have been, quite frankly, getting away with a lot when it comes to the finances of trash.
Councilor Scott?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was actually just going to bring up the trust language that was mentioned by the resident. Just, I'm sure in the rental permitting process, we must take that into consideration already, whether or not, they actually live there or not. There must be some way to put that language in. And the other thing is, I was just going to bring up, we are sending this back, correct, for public to bring it back again anyways. We're not voting on this, correct? And as Councilor Mercier brought up, the resident also reached out to me as well. I think the question was around, is the additional barrel fee changing? Like, that's one of the, the fees that would change possibly. If this is going up, then the price for another barrel is going up. And they also said there were 2 subcategories. That was an elderly duplex owner, whether or not they get the same rate, I guess, or, there's other rates other than these 3, I guess, that are in the language now, is what he had said to me. So if we can just look at that before it comes back. Thank you.
Councilor Janess?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I echo some of my colleagues' concerns about how we're going to do this, and I would also just like to put it on the record, just to have a motion to include language in here that if the resident is a beneficiary of the trust that owns the property will qualify for owner-occupied status. There's some other stuff, but we'll start there.
All those in favor say aye. Approved.
Okay, thank you. Additionally, I'd like to just comment on this from, kind of zoomed out perspective. I appreciated what you said earlier, Mr. Manager, about trying to get this so that the revenues we receive from the trash fees are much closer to the actual expense of the solid waste contract. This documentation has a deficit of $4.3 million for this year only, FY24. And as we've seen the projections, that is only getting wider. When we first negotiated these contracts, this included pickup of the city barrels downtown, for instance. It no longer includes that. We took that out. And so as we've gone through and made the decisions we've had to make in order to make this workable, we've created a situation where business owners, condo owners in large buildings, and larger residential buildings are now subsidizing single, 2, and 3 family homes through this contract. We've talked about parking, for instance, recently, and changed parking rates so that people who don't use the garages wouldn't be subsidizing the residents who do use the garages. This one almost goes entirely in the opposite direction. The residents and the businesses who pay for parking in the garages are not paying the trash pickup fees, but they are paying property tax, and those dollars are going towards the payment of this contract, for which they see no benefit. So I appreciate you moving in that direction, and I understand the pushback that we all received about this because of the large increase in one-time fees, or large increase at once of this recurring fee. But I think we got to get there. And to Councilor Gitcher's point earlier, I think we got to treat people equally. We have to be respectful and understanding of the different living situations that people find themselves in our city, and make sure that everyone is pulling their weight here. I do like the idea of eventually maybe going to a pay-as-you-throw model. I would like to see what that looks like in the future. But I just wanted to get those thoughts out there to be on the record. Thank you.
Mr. Clerk, roll call.
Mr. Mayor, are we voting to send this back?
The motion on the floor was to adopt. If there's a motion to send it back, then it should be made.
The numbers were amended for the ordinance that we're looking at currently.
Was it,
Motion to refer back.
was it amended to the numbers this evening, or similar to the public hearing, the budget, right?
No, it's a separate public hearing. You can refer it back to the manager and put it on. Or continue it for another,
Let's look good.
Yeah, so this particular ordinance would have to be, go back up for a first reading because there was an amendment made to this particular ordinance.
Sounds good.
So the vote on the floor would be to send it back, or it doesn't need it?
motion we refer back to the manager.
So Council Scott, motion to refer back to the manager, second by Council Robinson. All those in favor say aye, opposed, motion passes. 310, ordinance amend the sewer rate FY '25. Open the meeting to those that speak in favor, in favor, in favor. Portion of the meeting is closed. Those speaking in opposition, opposition, opposition. That portion of the meeting is closed. A motion to adopt by Council Leahy, seconded by Council Mercia. Comments?
Just one quick comment.
Council Scott.
Just a quick comment. And I know this is a change that, it is not a change to our current policy. It's just something that I'd like to bring up, I guess, as a concern, I guess, going forward, maybe into the next budget session, I guess. But there's a minimum wastewater charge and water charge of 1,400 cubic feet that we charge for all residents. I think it's a real disincentive to conserve water, or, and it's really a penalty, I think, to smaller households, for 1, 2, 3 people that live alone that don't reach that minimum criteria. So it's just something in the future I'd like to see them possibly look at, maybe, increasing the number of tiers or something to make up for that, to stop that disincentive. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. May, through the council. Council, great idea, and that we could kick it from a conservation standpoint, where it's, I guess, more fairly the costs are. If that small family unit is not spending that quote-unquote minimum bill. But that's a great idea, and we can move forward with that.
Councilor Robinson?
Through you to the city manager, maybe down the line, would there be some way to incentivize people to kind of cut back and use less, maybe through a credit or something? If they used below a certain amount, they'd be credited whatever it could be?
Mr. Manager, look into it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through to the council. We can look at any of this, any type of conservation piece. Currently, right now, seniors, they do have that ability to pay that, but not the general public, if you would. So that's something that we could look at. In a lot of this is just, care and custody and maintenance of piping and getting stuff there. So, but I don't think there's a real issue. When I talked to both folks, both executive directors, they didn't have a problem with going a per unit, similar to what we do for senior citizens right now. Didn't seem like there was a big issue. I'm sure we'd have to bring something back before the council for a vote.
Roll call.
Counsel Dakota.
Yes.
Counsel Getchia.
Yes.
Counsel Janess.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Counsel Noon.
Yes.
Counsel Robinson.
Yes.
Mayor Rourke.
Yes.
Counsel Scott.
Yes.
Counsel Yem.
Yes.
Counsel Chow.
Yes.
11 yeas.
311, ordinance, amend water rates FY '25. Start the public meeting with those wishing to speak in favor. In favor. In favor. Portion of the meeting is closed. Those wishing to speak in opposition. 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 That portion of the meeting is closed. The motion to adopt by Councilor Mercia, seconded by Councilor Yem. Comments? Councilor Getchia?
Just one through you to Manager Golden. On the water side, there is a minimum for elderly, but on the sewer, there isn't. So why is that, Mike?
Yeah, I believe there's a minimum.
It says NA on your end. That's on wastewater right there. It's not a big question, so it's not, I just wondered if in the future we could look at that.
There is yes, if you don't mind. Yeah, so the elderly, they go below the minimum charge, right? So the minimum charge is set at 14 HCF or 1,400 cubic feet per quarter, and they can go below that. 14.
And that's what I'm asking is how come water doesn't have that same piece that you have for the elderly, because they can go below it. Water is minimum is 14 only, but on wastewater, you can actually go below it and be charged below it. That's all I'm asking is in the future, if we can look at incorporating that in, where the elderly can go under the 14 and be billed just for the amount they use and not be billed the minimum.
Sounds good. Roll call?
Correct.
Counsel Dakota.
Yes.
Counsel Getchia.
Yes.
Counsel Janice.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Counsel Noon.
Yes.
Counsel Robinson.
Yes.
Mayor Rourke.
Yes.
Counsel Scott.
Yes.
Counsel Yem.
Yes.
Counsel Chow.
Yes.
11 yeas.
312, ordinance create new positions in various departments. Those, open the public hearing, those who speak in favor, in favor, in favor. Portion of meeting is closed, those who speak in opposition, 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 that portion of meeting is closed. Need a motion to adopt by Councilor Janice, second by Councilor Chow. Roll call.
Counsel Dakota.
Yes.
Counsel Getchia.
Yes.
Counsel Janice.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia. Counsel Noon.
Yes.
Counsel Robinson.
Yes.
Mayor Rourke.
Yes.
Counsel Scott.
Yes.
Counsel Yem.
Yes.
Counsel Chow.
Yes.
11 yeas.
Announcements, Councilor Noon. Councilor Mercia first, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Thank you. The city of Lowell is having a celebration of military service. It's on June 8th from 10 in the morning to 2 in the afternoon at Shed Park, 453 Rogers Street. There's a 5K race. The first 100 registers get a free event shirt, veterans free. Use, it's $25 to enter the race. Resource fair, mental health, substance abuse, service dogs. This resource fair, equine therapy, activity driven, financial. There's live music and other local acts. So it's going to be quite a day from 10 in the morning till 2 in the afternoon on June 8th. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Noon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The City of Lowell hosts the first annual Gun Violence and Awareness Vigil this Friday, June 7, starting at 10 a.m. at the City Hall. The City of Lowell asks that everyone come to join us in honor of the victim and survivor as we work to end gun violence in Lowell community. Please wear orange and bring a framed photo of your loved one as we come together for a collective moment of silence. This Friday, June 7, start at 10 a.m.
Thank you, Councilor. Any others? Motion to adjourn by Councilor Yam, second by Councilor Scott. Good evening.
This book must weigh 50 pounds.